Welcome everybody to the Tomfoolery panel. Today we have on the left Ico Rules, Chud Logic, and No Comment Chick. And on the right we have Rob Noor, Daniela Stumpy, and American Nacho. We'll go ahead and go around and let everybody introduce themselves. You can tell everybody where to find you, and even if you want to, tell them what topics you're excited about today. And then we'll go over some rules after that. So we'll start from the top left and go down the top first, and then down to Ico and across again. So, Nacho.
Hi, I'm American Nacho. I stream. I play video games. I just like being politically active. I like bringing more attention to this stuff instead of everybody being the skeleton in the closet that they're afraid to talk about. I think it's good that all of us are talking about this stuff. And so, yeah, that's my take on that. I'm really excited about, I think, the Georgia voter loss thing. I think that one's going to be pretty fun. I stream on Twitch and on YouTube. I stream for the Republican Nation on most nights, usually around like 9 o'clock, and as well as on my own channel. So you can find me at American Nacho on Twitch, and then at the Republican Nation on Twitch as well.
Awesome. Rob?
Yeah, my name is Rob Noor. You can find me on Rob Noor, as it's spelled there, all one word, on Twitch TV. I'm also on D Live at Normal America, and I'm on YouTube at Normal America with Rob Noor. I would call myself a conservative populist. My interest in streaming is I think that we see corruption in our government, particularly in the United States, but around the Western world. And I think that the government hasn't cared about working class people of any color or political affiliation for at least 50 years. And so they divide us with issues. We need to end this corruption, and then we could have discussions with, right or lefty economic policy and things like that. So that's where I'm coming from. I guess I'm excited for all three of these topics. I thought these were topics that I was all interested in, and looking to hear other people's opinions on it. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. Daniela.
All right, I'm Daniela. I don't have a streaming show or anything. I do have a page I contribute to called When Truth Becomes Revolution. I would characterize myself as a conservatarian, which I definitely stole from Tom. Although I'm probably more libertarian than Tom, and I sympathize with anarchists. Kind of understand where they're coming from. Not a big fan of the government, just want to be left alone and want them to stay out of everything. But I do really enjoy talking about politics and ideas. So this is really fun for me. Super excited to talk about the Derek Chauvin trial, because that's been really interesting. So,
awesome. Thanks for joining us. Ico.
Oh, hello. I'm Ico Rules on Twitch. I should have activated my YouTube streaming earlier, but them's the breaks. I'm here because Tom told me I had to be, even though I'm not on panels presently. I stream about, I don't know. We never know what's going to happen. But basically, politically, I don't want people to die in the street for any reason.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for coming, Ico. You're a good friend. Chud.
Hey, it's me, Chud Logic. You can find me on all good social media platforms by searching Chud Logic. Unfortunately, big tech censorship, as we all know, targets the left quite a lot, so I've been banned from Twitter twice. You can, however, follow my producer at Irrational Chad on twitter.com as well. I do mainly entertainment content. I'm here to entertain you. I do talk about politics and give some political takes. I'm interested in materialist analysis, using sort of Marxist frameworks to look at how things are. And kind of open-minded to different policy proposals that could fix some of the issues in society. And that's me. I'm looking forward to speaking about the Chauvin trial. I haven't really covered it that much myself, so I was doing a little bit of research for the panel, just catching up with what's going on. So yeah, looking forward to talking about that.
Awesome. And then No Comment Chick.
You might want to unmute first. Hey everybody, my name is Big Red the Woke Scold. Oh wait, no, actually my name is No Comment Chick. I just got confused because I used Big Red in my thumbnail and just turned her hair blue. Because I think she looks like an older version of me. This is like the Karen that I'm going to grow into. But anyway, yeah, I'm Karen because I'm Karen I'm caring for the concerns of marginalized people. Oh my god, no, I'm actually making fun of the caricature that's out there of me right now. So I do Twitch actually debate analysis, like panels like Tom's. I love to watch with my chat, discuss in depth, pause it way too much, which some panel hosts are very sensitive about. Another thing that panel hosts are sometimes sensitive about is that I offer opinions about, their decisions and how they kind of impact not just the panel itself, but how the panel, kind of affects the world outside there, and our responsibility as content creators, and in terms of platforming and stuff like that. And that is something that certain content creators are very sensitive about. Getting your pronouns right, maybe not so much, but that's okay. But I love Tom Foolery's panel here. I think it's one of the best ones on Twitch. I think it's underrated. Folks, if you're watching my stream, you've seen me on other panels. They do not have this level of infinite regress. So right now, my image is inside, my image is inside, my image is my... We've never had this perfect of an illustration of the concept that RGR was fucking right. Based RGR. Anyway, that's my take. I am No Comment Check. You can find me on Twitch and YouTube. And on my gaming channel, also on YouTube, No Console Check.
Thank you. All right. So yeah, and then I'm Tom. I go by Tom Foolery. I'm the moderator today. I run invite-only panels here every Thursday now on YouTube. We're doing them on Twitch for a while. I put them off, hoping that I was going to be back on Twitch, but it seems like the ban is still holding. So I'm going to ramp them back up on YouTube today. All of you have YouTube channels, so I figured I would invite you guys first. I appreciate all of you joining. And then I also do random Discord, like open Discord panels throughout the week. Mostly I play video games and listen to debates and stuff like that. So today's rules: one, when I talk, nobody else talks. I won't be participating in the debates, but I might step in to ask like clarifying questions and things like that, help in translation. I do speak righty and lefty fluently, so hopefully I can help in some translations. Two, we will have opening statements in each round. We won't have closing statements unless necessary. Sometimes if it's still heated towards the end, we'll go into some closing statements, but most of the time, everybody's gotten what they have to say out by the end. Each topic should last about 45 minutes. We don't want anybody interrupting, though, during opening statements. That is just your time. Try to keep it at about 2 minutes or less. And then three, I will stop for only, or stop and like interrupt for a couple of reasons. One, if you're talking for too long and we need to let somebody else in. Two, if you're interrupting too much. And then three, for gish galloping. Sometimes let's clarify this. If you're going over like 3, 4, 5 different points at once, most of the time we want to go point by point. So gish galloping is technically when you give numerous points at once, to where it's hard, especially on a panel, for them to refute all 5 points. So if you try to keep it at 1 point at a time, if nobody tries to challenge that first point, go on to 3 or 4 or 5. I don't care. Just as long as nobody's trying to challenge them, then I will let you go. It's easiest if you try to start with your explanation and then move on and then finish with your point. Lots of times somebody asks you a question, you want to start with the answer and then go to the explanation. But if you want to be able to explain, it's probably best if you start with the explanation and finish with the answer. We will allow interrupting and things like that, as long as the person who's being interrupted is okay with it. Outside of that, we'll try to give the time back to the person who was talking. Does anybody have any questions?
Nope.
All right, cool. We will move on to the first topic, which is: should or will Derek Chauvin be charged and or convicted with murder? We are going to start just like we did with the intros. We'll start with Nacho, and then we will let's see. Actually, let's start on the other side. We'll go Daniela and then No Comment Jake.
Okay. Should he be charged with murder? Well, he's being charged with unintentional homicide. 3 separate counts characterized in 3 separate ways. Which I think is really interesting because the narrative in the media has been that this was on purpose and he's evil and he's a racist. But I don't know how you, like, why a racist would unintentionally kill somebody. It seems like they would intentionally kill somebody. But regardless of that, I think that's really interesting that all the charges are unintentional homicide. And as far as whether or not he can be convicted, I don't know. I don't know that the prosecution has been able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that A, he was a significant contribution to the death of George Floyd, and that if he was, it was due to unlawful conduct, which are 2 things they would need to prove, and I don't know that they have yet.
Okay, we'll go to no comment, Jake.
So, should he be charged with murder? Yes, in a just society. We don't live in that society, though, so they're doing what they can. I think they are pursuing the most justice that's realistic to expect to be possible, but will it actually happen? It doesn't seem to. It doesn't seem to. It seems like, there's been a pattern here of constant just negligence on the part of the judicial system. A certain way of looking at these things and always seeing the negative in the victim and always assuming, giving the benefit of the doubt to the officer involved in the killing. So, I'm not expecting anything too much, but it seems like the judge, they're holding their cards close to their chest. So, we'll see. The closing statements are on Monday.
I think so. Yeah, I thought they were tomorrow.
Tomorrow, okay.
No, the closing statements were today, and then their
deliberations are Monday.
The deliberation all week, right? And then they're coming back Monday. I think that's what they said.
No comment, Jake.
Besides a recidivism case, I don't know exactly how this works.
Are my eyes tripping me out, or is Chud logic? Yeah, I was about to say he's moving.
Oh my god.
He's got his
Perfect.
icon for Chud Logic, and I've got my icon for Chud Logic. Mine is actually animated, so I don't know if he wants to borrow that instead. Yeah, you're singing Tomato Town. Wait, can I turn it on Tomato Town, or will it DMCA? Probably DMCA.
Maybe we should just crack on with opening statements. Let's do that, hey?
Yeah,
let's do play Fortnite instead.
Rob, go ahead.
Okay. So just to clarify, he's already been charged with the charges he has. So it's
right.
Will he be convicted? Yeah. Will he be convicted? I don't know. He probably will be. The tragedy is that it probably still won't be justice because the jurors have to, in the back of their mind, know that there will be riots if they don't go the way that the mob wants, and that they themselves could personally be affected by that. Now, on to the specific case. Look, I don't have skin in the game either way. I thought that he was guilty of manslaughter, but we have an adversarial court system where there's due process and a presumption of innocence, and so it's up to the prosecution to prove their case. The prosecution has to prove 2 things in order to find him guilty of third-degree murder or second-degree manslaughter. I think the charge of second-degree murder is nonsense because that would have to prove intent on Chauvin's part, which I don't think they've even made an argument that he had intent. So they would have to prove the following things: 1, that Derek Chauvin operated and evinced a disregard for human life and basically operated outside the scope of his training, and 2nd, that was the primary cause of death. So we could talk about both of those causes, but I'm most interested in the first because the person that we should look at that would know whether or not Chauvin operated within the scope of his training was the person that made that training manual and that trained Derek Chauvin, and that was Lieutenant Mercel, and he gave a lot of reasons to put what I think is probably a reasonable doubt that actually Chauvin could have been operating within the scope of what he had been trained to do, and if that's the case, then he's not guilty of these things. So we'll see how it goes, but I think that's where the interesting conversation is.
Okay. Yeah, the question was specifically charged and or convicted, both because you may not think that there was enough evidence, or that some of the charges that they gave him was overcharging him. So,
second degree murder was an overcharge, and certainly first degree would have been an overcharge. The rest I'm fine with.
Hey Rob,
Chuck-
on that idea that like if he's following the training manual, he's not culpable. I mean, like maybe not like legally, but I mean, do you see a like certain historical parallel here that's
Hold
even
on,
disturbing?
Yeah, we're gonna wait.
Sorry, I thought we were in real stuff. Okay, sorry.
No,
No.
we're gonna go to Chud Logic and then American
Chud.
Nacho and then Aiko. Go ahead, Chud.
Sorry, can I clarify something real quick?
What's that?
Or we can do it later.
Wait.
The second-degree murder charge in Minnesota, as it's being applied, is unintentional.
Yeah, it doesn't need intent. Correct. All right, Chud Logic. Go ahead.
Sure. I mean, I'd be very surprised if anyone would argue the case that Chauvin shouldn't have been charged. Like, I'm fairly certain most people agree that there was enough evidence to at least charge the guy. I mean, you just have to look at the videotape. I think that's enough evidence in itself. Further to that, in terms of whether he'll be prosecuted, I mean, obviously it's an ongoing case. I'm not a legal expert. However, there has been some pretty damning people coming up to the stand. For example, in what I believe is a fairly unprecedented case, the police chief actually testified against Chauvin. Which in itself I think is pretty damning. I do kind of reject the framing of the idea that the jury are going to act in such a way as to placate the mob. I think that's a ludicrous assertion because if we look at the history of the prosecutions of police officers that have committed an act or been accused of something, more often than not they're let off the hook. So yeah, I think the precedent here is actually Chauvin being let off. The precedent isn't him being prosecuted. But yeah, I think that based on what we've seen from the trial, fairly certain that he will be prosecuted on at least one of those charges. And that's it.
All right, and then American Nacho.
Sorry, I couldn't find my mute thing on this thing. Yeah, so I think should he be convicted? I'm kind of in the same boat as Rob. Like, I'd like to know. I know I saw the same testimony as far as like the police chief like testifying basically against him, saying like this is not a technique that they use. But I don't know how long ago he was trained. Like, hasn't he been in law enforcement for like 20 years, something like that? So it could have been something that he was trained in, and then now there's a new training process. So if that's the case, I didn't see that in any kind of defense. That would have been something that I would have used in my defense. So, I mean, if that's the case and that's not part of the training, then yeah, he's responsible by negligence. But if this was training, then I don't see how he's responsible. And as far as like will he? I don't know. I'm leaning towards he probably will. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I have more, but we'll get into that.
You're muted.
You're muted.
Yeah, Aiko, go ahead.
Okay. It wasn't just one officer that testified against him. Also, there's the police. It's the lieutenant who was talking about like exactly what Nacho just said. How it wasn't a part of the training. It wasn't like it was stuff that you don't do. You don't like put your knee on someone's like neck. And also, like, I mean, if you stomached watching some of the footage, I think it's pretty clear that, I mean, whatever his intent was, does anyone go into something like that being like, I'm going to murder you? Like, I think that what it shows is like a complete lack of regard for life, and probably, yeah, definitely racism. And I think that it is, if you see something that looks like mob outrage to you, it's because of this happens all the time where there's no consequences. It's the problem is that when something like this happens, the police, they are nearly bulletproof when it comes to like their unions. And yeah, like what's his name? The guy who there's so many people. There's like, they decided not to charge never mind. I'll have to look up the person I'm talking about. But anyway, yeah, he should definitely be charged with all of these things. As for punishment, like I don't know I don't know what the appropriate punishment is, but he seems like a very twisted person. And yeah, fuck him.
All right. Rob, we'll go to you for first rebuttal. Go ahead.
Sure. Daniela, I actually believe is incorrect. So murder in the second degree in Minneapolis, it's whoever does the following is guilty of murder in the second degree and may be sentenced to imprisonment for not more than 40 years. 1, causes of death of a human being with intent to effect of the death of the person of another, but without premeditation. So the second degree murder charge actually does require intent. The third degree does not, nor does the second degree manslaughter. But the second, and there has been no claim of intent offered by the prosecution whatsoever. So I do want to say real quick that the feelings, like personally, whether like I know No Comment Chick was about to ask me, like, is following orders a justification? Yes, it is. Even the prosecution admitted. If no one likes what happened, I don't want George Floyd to die. I don't think anyone in this panel or anywhere else would argue that. The point is, though, we have an assumption of innocence, and if there was if he operated within the scope of his training, then the fault doesn't lie with Chauvin. It lies with the training. And even though the police chief did say in a very rudimentary way that this wasn't a hold that was trained, that is belied by 2 things. 1, actual images presented at trial that show that this exact type of neck restraint using your knee is shown. A picture of that is shown in their training handbook. And 2nd, the actual person that created the training curriculum and that trained officers, I don't know if he directly trained Chauvin, but was in charge of training officers while Chauvin was charged, that guy's going to have more to speak about whether or not this was a hold that Chauvin was trained in or not. He talked about a use of force continuum, and when you talked about all the specific factors such as drug use of Floyd, the size advantage of Floyd, the fact that Floyd was fighting with 3 officers,
this
the
sounds
fact that there
like
was a
Trayvon
crowd
Martin
that was
all over again, Rob. Like you're talking about the size of the person. You're talking like
Right.
This is the old maybe he's on drugs. What are we dealing with here, Rob? Like why do you
George-
why do right wingers always say this about black people that get killed by cops?
Real quick, and
Wait,
George
what?
Zimmerman was found innocent or was found not guilty. of
Yeah,
Trayvon
yeah.
Martin.
There's another.
So you're making my
there's
you're
another
making my
guilty man
point.
running around.
You're
Yeah,
feeling.
you're
Listen,
making my
listen.
point for you,
If we're having a conversation
Rob,
on
what
the
does that
feelings,
say about the institution of the
I'll give
police?
you-
The
I'll
fact
give
that
you
that
plenty of
training
time
was
to
in the
respond.
manual. Rob, explain the training
I'll
being
give you
in the
plenty-
manual. Deadly training in the manual. What does that say? If that's your excuse, okay, and we let this guy off, what does that say about the institution of the police?
Drink
If you're
some
not going to convict
protein.
this guy,
That
you've
will
got to
soothe
convict the
your
very
throat.
institution of the police. Rob, are you prepared to do that today?
There's
so
not enough
again,
evidence
what we can
yet
see is
that
like
it is deadly. There is not
Right.
enough evidence of that at the current moment. So that's an emotional argument based on no evidence.
That's not
whatsoever.
Do you not have emotions about this?
Right.
What's going on? Can you be
What-
cool and calm and
the way
collected
this-
about this injustice that keeps on carrying on and on and on?
If I may, what we'll see from this panel, what we'll see is what you often see. One side is going to be looking at the actual testimony that occurred within
One
the
side
trial.
can't think of
and
how to counteract my arguments, so you're trying to
the
paint a
other
false
side,
narrative.
the other
Rob,
side is
come
just
on.
going to
Come
scream
on,
and
Rob.
interrupt and talk about. The other side will just
Interrupt,
scream and
Rob.
interrupt and talk about
Is
motion.
it- are you gonna accuse
That's
me
what
of
they'll
gish
do.
galloping
So
next, Rob?
again, what we could see is they can't stay on focus and talk about the
I
actual
think you
points
can't
of the
stay on
trial.
focus because you're fucking rattled, dude.
Okay,
You don't
I'm
have
let's
not
enough.
let,
rattled at all.
let's
What are
let
you
Rob,
offering as your argument? Are you going to
Alright.
convict the
Me,
police as
I'll
an
Alright,
institution? Rob, once again, police
Hold on.
as the institution or the man?
Okay.
Which
we're
one?
gonna let Rob finish real quick, and then you can ask.
Can you
him
answer
a-
my
a
question, though?
question.
I would
That's what I was
love
gonna say.
that.
If you want to reiterate your question,
For the third time? I think
Yeah.
let's give him more time to think about it because he fucking can't
I
answer.
don't need time to. I don't need time.
Oh,
to,
what
I'm
are you?
waiting
Then
for
why are you fucking like? Well, what we're gonna see here today is you're the storyteller. Why are you like doing a narrative? Why are you the narrator? Like you're
waiting for
pausing,
you
you're
to stop.
stalling.
Not
I'm waiting for you to
Not-
stop
not
flapping your
time for
gums
this
and
yet.
interrupting.
I'm
That's
flapping
what
my
I'm doing.
gums, Rob.
Okay.
What is that kind of boomerism?
I
Flapping
mean,
your gums.
this is going to be a worthless panel. I can see this already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
You know,
we've got
comment
a
check
one
out,
worthless.
but I'll answer.
panel
If
member, so.
you would just be quiet for a second, I'll answer. Yes, as I said previously, if we're looking, the question that was before us was whether or not he will be convicted and if he should be convicted. And when discussing that, we should discuss what's going on in the trial. I said that if you think what happened to George Floyd was heinous, but it was within the scope of training, then clearly we need to change the training. That does not mean that Chauvin
Change
is
the
guilty.
training, okay.
Right.
So what kind of an institution produces deadly training like that, Rob?
No. The training, this is not the training is the point. Like more than one of the people, I think what you were referring to, his former supervisor, Rob?
The person that trained him. Yeah, the trainer.
Yeah.
But the images, you said they showed images.
They did show images. The images.
Hold on one second.
Yeah, sorry.
He specifically said that it is not a part of the train. Like when Floyd stopped resisting, he should have immediately stopped.
That's not what he said.
That's not what he said.
No. What did he say?
I have the testimony. So what was asked upon direct, this was Lieutenant Mercel, again, the person that was responsible for crafting the training program.
That's a different person. Sorry.
Right. So what Lieutenant Mercel was asked he was called by the prosecution, and on direct of prosecution, he was asked whether or not you would put your knee in someone's neck for 9 minutes, and he said no. The problem was they were leaving out all the details around the case. So when there was an attempt for cross-examination, what ended up happening was the defense asked Lieutenant Mercel about all the specific situations. Is it justified to continue restraining someone even if they're unconscious because they could get up and be more aggravated? Yes. Does drug use factor into this? Yes. Does the size of the person factor in? Yes. Does the fact that this person was fighting with multiple police officers and they couldn't restrain him previously? Yes. Does the fact that there's a mob there that's yelling that they're going to whoop their pussy asses, the cops, factor into this? Yes. Does the fact that the paramedics wouldn't give him first aid when they showed up because they thought it was a hostile environment suggest this? Yes.
Does the fact that we all saw a man be murdered matter? It's not gish galloping, Rob.
It's not gish galloping. I'm making the
Listen,
point.
I'm not demon mama, okay? I'm not going to let you fucking go off.
Okay.
You're not letting
that's right, Rob.
This is not going to be productive. This is not.
Wait. Let's slow down.
Just talking over him. You have to let him answer if you ask him a question.
Let's just bring it down.
You just pivoted away from my fucking question like 8 times. What are you talking about?
Let's just bring the temperature. Let's bring the temperature down a little bit. Okay. Right. Sorry, Tom. I don't want to take over. You go ahead and say what you need to say. But I'm a bit concerned. We're getting a bit
I was going to
heated.
hand it over to you, buddy. Go ahead.
Yeah. What I'd like to ask you, Rob, is why are you so dismissive of the testimony of the police chief?
Well, it's a fair question. First off, the testimony of the police chief was very similar. He was asked if you would put your knee on someone's neck. Now, keep in mind, he's a political appointee. But even aside from that, right?
Wait.
More? Like,
sorry.
I'm looking at. I'll explain.
No. Wait. You said he's a political appointee. I just want you to elaborate on that. What do you mean?
But he wasn't someone that had been in the office for like 20 years that worked his way up. He's someone that was voted on, and he was I don't know if he was voted on or a political appointee.
Mercel?
No, not Mercel, the chief. I believe he was a political appointee.
What evidence have you got for that? Wait. What evidence have you got that he's a political appointee, please? What have you got to point to demonstrate this?
Let me see here.
Is he a political appointee because I mean, you know,
there are a lot of people it's a pretty big deal when actual officers and a police chief normally
in the case of if I may. So in the case of Chief Arenado, for example, he was appointed to his position by the chief of the mayor of Minneapolis, Mayor Frey. This is obviously a political appointment by a political official who is effectively Chief Arenado's boss, and that makes the chief's job a political job, not a cop job.
What source is that you're using?
Okay, so
sure, I'll post the link. Sure. But just to answer quickly, I would if we had 2 different police officers, regardless of the rank, both testifying about a specific use of force event. One of them was someone that is high ranking, and the other one was the person who specifically crafted the use of force model and trained people in that use of force model. I would assume the person that crafted and trained would have more of an expertise of what Chauvin would have been taught than the chief of police.
Right. Except there wasn't just 2. And wait, which person were you talking about that trained? Are you talking about Mercel as the trainer?
Correct. Yes.
He did not train him.
He created Lieutenant Mercel. He was brought forth by the prosecution. The first 20 minutes of his testimony were establishing his bona fides. He talked about he works in the MPD training division in charge of use of force training and policy instruction. He was active in that capacity during the period preceding the Floyd events, during which Chauvin would have received his department use of force training and policy instruction. Mercel talked specifically about how he was a Brazilian jiu-jitsu instructor and they fell in love with that. And that's why they developed this curriculum, because they realized that it was less force to be able to use your body weight to restrain someone than strikes and things like that. So this is a person that crafted the training. Yes.
He also did say that you are not supposed to restrain someone like that unless it's like your only option. He said it's called like a red zone, where you can really seriously injure or kill someone if you do that. So yeah.
So I could read exactly. I could. At the end of Mercel's testimony, cross-examination, after they went through all the factors that I was trying to say, all the questions that he was asked by the defense team, these were the last two questions he was asked. Are there circumstances like those already discussed where it would be appropriate to maintain plates and back in order to ensure control of the suspect? Yes, there are, Mercel answered. For as long as 10 minutes, it's possible. That is reasonable doubt. So they went through all the factors that led to this situation that Chauvin did, and they ask him as the final question, is this justified given these situations like this? Would it be justified given all the things we just asked you? He says yes. They said even for 10 minutes, he says it's possible. Now remember, they only have to have a reasonable doubt. And so if I'm a jurist, again, I don't have skin in this game. I thought that by looking at it objectively, just from what we saw before the trial, it looked like Chauvin was probably guilty of manslaughter. The problem is the prosecution has to prove it. And if their own witness that they called wasn't properly, either he's A, just telling the truth and it's devastating for the prosecution, or B, he was underprepared. But as a jurist, that's the testimony I'm most interested in, because he was responsible for training Chauvin or creating the program that trained Chauvin. And even the prosecution has admitted that if they can't prove that Chauvin operated outside of this scope, he's innocent of all charges, which I could read that comment if you want as well.
All right, we're gonna get a couple other people in here real quick.
Sorry,
Danielle. Yeah, go ahead, Chad.
I was just gonna quickly say before I'll cede my time after this. Basically, the website that you've used as your source, Legal Insurrection, has a heavy right-wing bias, according to
I don't care.
Okay, but
It's irrelevant.
No, it's not irrelevant, is it? Because you're saying that this source is saying it's a political appointee. I'm pointing out to you that this is a right-wing biased source. I would argue that, the fact that chief of police, he's no more a political appointee than any other chief of police is. And I believe that there's another reason that you believe this police chief was a political appointee, but I just think you're too afraid to say it because of how it sounds.
What's that?
I think the police chief is always an appointee of the mayor.
It is.
Exactly. So how is it?
Right.
So how is it? Exactly. Thank you. So how is it that this you use the evidence that this person was appointed, that he's a political appointee? So how is this any different to any other police chief?
Oh, it wouldn't be. Who said it was?
He's on the other side.
No,
That's
you
why.
said it was.
Is that the right answer? Is that the right answer? Because he's on the other side of the case, right?
You said earlier you used the fact that he was appointed by the mayor as evidence that he was a political appointee. Okay, and
right.
now But now you're saying that that's not the case. Which is it? Was he a political appointee or not?
No, you're if you give me a chance, I'm absolutely saying it's the case, as you just proved. Yes, he is a political appointee. Yes, all police chiefs, I think everywhere in the United States, are political appointees.
But why do you
the point is,
this
just real quick, like if you ask me, just give me a chance. The point I'm trying to make is someone that's a political appointee might be looking at this through a political lens more than someone who's not a political appointee.
But they're all political appointees, right? Didn't we just establish that? Wait, no.
Is Lieutenant Mercel?
But we're talking
No. I'm talking about police chiefs in general.
But why is that relevant? Why is that relevant?
Because when the police chief is on the other side of the case, you never bring that up. Now you're bringing it up. Now it's a big deal.
Prove that I've never brought it up in another case.
So wait. The point I'm making here.
Don't tempt me with a good time, Rob.
Let me finish.
That sounds like a good YouTube video.
Wait. Let me finish, okay? So the point that I'm making here is this is unprecedented. To my knowledge, a police chief has never testified against a cop when they're in a dock in a situation like this. So this is unprecedented that this has happened, but you just dismiss it as, he's a political appointee. And I think you're kind of obfuscating the fact that this is a very significant factor of this case, which to me contributes to the idea that he's going to be prosecuted.
It's just real quick, I'll say, I don't know that this is unprecedented. I would imagine there are situations where chiefs have testified against their officers. And second, I was just responding to the fact if we're saying whose testimony should we favor more, the person who did the training or the police chief? I was just giving reasons. And the biggest reason's not that he's a political appointee, but that is a small reason. But the biggest reason is he didn't craft the training regime. He didn't train Chauvin. That was Mercil. So when we're talking about whether or not he was operating within the scope of training, that's the person we should listen to. That's it.
Well, didn't he say? He said that it violated police policy, ethics, and training.
Correct. Yeah.
No, he didn't say. So again, what happened was
no?
the prosecution calls. So the way these things work is the prosecution first gets to call their witnesses and then the defense gets to present their case. So the prosecution called him as a witness. And first they go through his credentials, which again is a reason that we should trust him. That's the prosecution, not the defense. And then they started asking him questions. But the way they asked the questions, they said things like this. Is it appropriate to put your knee on someone's neck for 10 minutes? No, it's not. Do you train people that you should do that? No, we don't. The problem with this is the prosecution then gets to talk about the specific details. While it is true that they don't train people to put their knee on their neck for 10 minutes, it's also true that that one of the first things Mercil testifies to is that actually that there are things that aren't specifically trained that are within justification for police to do if they feel the use of force continuum justifies it. Then they ask the specific situations, which I already went over some of those questions, so I won't repeat. And at the end of it, Mercil says, yes, I could see this being used. Mercil also testified that from a different angle, it actually appears as if the knee wasn't on the neck, but actually the knee was on the shoulder blades and it was the shin across the neck. And there's an actual picture in their training manual of that exact same hold.
I still feel like we're letting this guy weasel out of the question that I asked. And that's the question is, if the individual is not responsible because it was the training that caused the death of this man, you would say that like, well, you just got to change the training a little bit. I would say it's the institution that has to be fundamentally
But that's
changed,
so extreme.
right?
Like,
No,
obviously
it's not. No, it's not so extreme. How the fuck is an institution going to implement deadly fucking use of force? Look, no, they're like implementing deadly use of force as like a part of their training. Okay, are you going to tell me that's a problem with the training, or is it a problem with the institution?
What's your solution then? What's your solution then? That's the police. That's your solution.
My solution is that we get new cops.
All new. Just fire them all, right?
Good luck finding somebody. Have fun.
Good luck finding somebody.
I think we're moving away.
How about if we pay them a little bit more than what we're paying them now? How about if we treat them like
Probably
fucking
cooking.
professionals in our society
And not robots.
and train them better
We're here.
That's
and longer? We should
can agree
invest
with
in better cops and use less of them. And we should use different people because the ones that we got here now are just enacting
We're not here
fucking
to
power
talk about
trips.
this. Look, listen, we're not here to discuss the abolition of the police or whether we should or we shouldn't or what.
Well, no, but like Rob's argument implies that, Chud. Do you not understand that? Rob's argument implies that if it's not the individual, then where the fuck do we displace the, like, because this horrible crime went on and there's somebody that's fucking culpable. If we're not going to say it's the individual, then we got to say it's the institution. This idea that it's just, the training, that's bullshit. That's a patsy. Like,
Wow.
No, we're not-
implemented. Who implemented the training?
I mean, like,
Okay, can I just say something? They removed this from the training manual after this incident. So
Right.
when they received evidence
I guess it's
that
all
it
better
was
now.
in fact deadly force, they removed it, or that it could end up in a deadly force situation. Again, no evidence, not substantial evidence yet that it was in fact the reason, but when it came to that sort of
Wait, are you on that
situation
carbon
itself,
monoxide thing?
it
Is that
has
what you're going to
to be-
propose? What do you think is the reason, though?
what?
No, are you going to let
She
didn't even finish what she was saying.
I know what
the
you
whole
meant.
time?
It's because I'm on a trampoline. It's okay. You should try it too. It's really good.
Okay.
It'll help your posture.
They
Your posture's a little
removed it
off.
from the manual
that happens with-
when they received evidence that it was in fact deadly force. So the institution seems to be working.
No, that's not fucking working. Somebody died. What the fuck? How is that the institution working?
How are they supposed
Does it
to
not fucking matter? I guess we write that black man off. It's okay. There's
If I may.
plenty more where that
So
came
if-
from. Oh my
That's
god.
okay.
What kind of
That
foolishness is
medicine
this?
is fucking
This is
useless
monstrosity.
because during a surgery that's not commonly done, somebody died. And now we need to shut down.
That's
all
not a
medicine.
fucking surgery. That was a murder and we all fucking saw it.
If I
God,
may,
she's trying to
if
give
I-
an analogy.
If I can,
Jesus.
so for example, the second use of force testimony that was offered was by someone from LA named Jody Steiger. Jody Steiger actually testified that Chauvin would have been within his rights to actually use more force when he showed up on the scene. They consider the use of taser, although it's considered less than lethal, it still has the potential to be lethal. So the question I would ask you, No Comment Chick, you're saying if someone died, that proves that police are horrible or that everything's
that's not
horrible.
what I said. I said the institution is horrible, Rob.
Okay, well that's what I'm saying. That the institution of the police is horrible.
I'm not saying.
Do you think they should be allowed to use tasers?
Do I think they should be allowed to use tasers?
Correct.
I'm not an expert on use of force, Rob. This is not my area of expertise. Like,
but here's why I bring it up. I just bring it up because you're saying,
they can be
well,
deadly?
someone
Because we
died. Just real quick, you can answer. You're saying someone died from something that it looks like they could have been trained to do. Therefore, that shows that this is horrible. We need to scrap them. People have died of taser use.
There's so many other reasons for this, Rob, but you're always ignoring it. What I'm saying is that if you're going to exonerate this man, okay, if you're going to say it's not his fault, if you're going to blame it on the training, I ask you what institution put that training into place. And if we say that after the fact, after he died, they took the training out and they said, whoops, that's kind of a bad thing. Like, what guarantee do we have that every decision being made by this institution doesn't have the same sort of bias implicit in its mindset that caused this this training to be implemented in the first place? It caused this to be the thing that was in the fucking manual, the thing that that looks like murder to anybody. Any fucking human being that watches that says, "What did you just see? I saw a murder. I saw a man purposefully fucking killed."
The problem is no one's argued that it's purposeful, not even the prosecution, because that would prove intent.
No one's offered it's purposeful because we know that cops fucking get off on everything, so they're trying to charge them with the bare minimum so they get them for something.
Is this what the stream's going to be? Just you irrationally screaming when anyone makes a point?
Yes, Rob, I'm going to be irrationally screaming. I know it's not an argument.
Great content. Anyways,
no content.
The problem with your statement was you said how do we know that the rest of their policies don't come from the same bias? But we don't know that this was a matter of bias, why there's a policy. It could be a matter of ignorance. Like what you're doing is
why do we have ignorant fucking people deciding our policy, Rob? The institution's fucked up.
If this is what this is going to be, just you yelling, it's worthless.
I'm sorry, Rob, but you pitch your voice. It's the only way to talk over your gish gallop.
Anyways, you keep saying words that don't make any sense in the context of what we're talking about. Anyways, we don't have any evidence.
The problem is you cannot answer the question. This is your kryptonite, Rob. That's why I'm facing you with that.
I've answered the question like 5 times. Anyways, please stop interrupting. Please stop interrupting. Please stop interrupting. It's not a worthwhile conversation if you're going to interrupt, not listen to someone. So, anyways, the problem is that it's easy to look at things with hindsight being 2020, and it's easy to look at things from always the perspective of, well, the police could always do things better. That's probably true in any given situation with law enforcement. They probably could have done things even just a little better, even in stops that don't result in violence or anything like that. The problem is you have to understand when they're creating this training, they have to take in the accounts of police officers' lives, victims' lives, the suspects' lives, bystanders' lives, etc. And there is a need for a use of force. If we just approached it with any use of force that ever resulted in someone's
our position, Rob.
I'm not strawmanning.
Like,
you're literally saying.
Hey, wait, no. You're literally do a timer on this. How long has Rob talked?
So what?
Are we gonna let him just go off and fucking gish gallop it? Is everybody hypnotized here? What the hell?
No comment, Chick. What's the difference?
He hasn't been able to finish speaking.
Explain what it is.
I asked him a question. He hasn't fucking tried to answer it.
I've answered it several times, and I just want to say, real quick, I just want to say real quick that the police, they're obvious, it's not completely nefarious. We need to use force at some time, but I'm glad to have No Comment Chick on here because you're a great example of you're a great example of the left. You're a great example of the left.
Let's do a black and white fallacy, Rob.
I think umbrage with that. This is not a good representation for the record.
Listen, can I be honest? Okay, look, with all due respect, Irene, I think we just need to simmer down a bit because, we're trying to have a discussion here. And we're
Thank you very much.
No, please,
let's remember that a man died.
Please don't interrupt me. Listen, you don't need to morally grandstand with me. I know that a man died, okay? But we're not here to discuss reform or abolition. What we're here to discuss, okay, is very simple.
What we're here to discuss is how this always slips culpability, how no one's ever punished, how Rob was worried about riots? You're fucking worried about riots? You know what causes riots, Rob?
No one said anything about riots right now. And listen, I am...
No, Rob did say something about riots. Pay attention or don't...
No, Irene, come on.
No, Aiko, you gotta listen to him. He said that. I'm responding to that, okay? You might have been zoned out from the WAP pot, but
Listen,
know, yeah,
look, I'm
you
going to
can
tell
say
you.
that.
Listen. I'm going to tell you straight, Irene. I don't know what your goal is
Okay.
here, but you're making us look absolutely terrible and ridiculous. Please simmer down, for the love of God.
All right.
Good on you.
We're gonna
Good
go
on you.
to we're gonna go to American Nacho. Let him get some words in before we move to the next topic.
Yeah, so I'm pretty much in agreement to a degree. Like, okay,
Okay,
just to be
groomer.
clear, I want to ask Rob, if this is the training, we should stop doing this part of the training, right?
Yeah, I would think so. I think that.
Yeah, that's.
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah, as far as going further into like revamping the entire institution, I don't know if I could get on board with that. Can we do better as far as like our police training, as far as like funding the police and getting more and more training into the police departments? Yeah, absolutely. Like, I don't think anybody's saying like nothing should be changed and everything needs to stay the way it is. This is fine. Like, while the building's burning down, I don't think anybody here is going to take that position. But as far as like, completely turning everything upside down on its head, I don't know if that's the solution either.
Okay. All right. We will go ahead and move on to the second topic.
I would
the
just
question
like to say for the record
Mhm.
that
I know
I
you're not
would
really
like-
that stoned. I'm sorry.
you know what? No, seriously, Irene, like you need to just stop. We're trying to help, and you just have to
Aiko,
stop.
you're
Okay.
losing to Rob. You're a feeder. Okay? Do you know what LOL?
No,
Yeah, you're
you
feeding
are
him.
no.
Feeder,
Listen,
feeder.
listen. This is something
And
else.
Chad,
I
you're
don't
a
know what's
simp.
going on.
I saw
but
you just
you
like
did not
weekly
have
get
to
folded over by
insult me.
Dylan.
You didn't. No,
How
stop
does-
talking
There's
about
no
Dylan.
pushback. There's no
Nothing
guts.
to do with
These
Dylan.
aren't leftists that stand up. These are leftists that stand the fuck down. And I'm sick of it. You gotta do better for your community.
All right.
You're failing your
Hold
community.
on. Hey, guys,
If you can't do this, get somebody that can.
guys, everybody chill for just a minute. I gotta mute everybody. We can have these conversations. We can ask the same questions without the interrupting, without the yelling. We have to get through all of these topics. People have to be able to talk. They got to be able to give their points. We want to give everybody the time that they need to get their points out. So all of us, everybody, let's try to just simmer down a little bit, and we will we'll get through this. Okay?
Tom,
Yes.
can I apologize really quick? I did interrupt, Rob and Chud and some other people, and I might have gone a little bit hard on you. But listen, I'm emotional about this because this is not just, another fucking day in America. And, oh, guess this didn't work this time. Let's try to tweak this little thing. This is fucked up. And you're going to see more riots, and you're going to see more social unrest, and you're going to see more fucking, just horrible shit unless we actually take this out and do something, dramatic. I'm not saying overnight just fucking Thanos snaps all the cops, out of existence and replace them with other people. But I am saying let's look at some really intense interventions, because this shit has gone really off rails, and the American people have been crying out for justice for years and years. That's why I'm so emotional. And you're right. I was a little inappropriate, and I'm sorry to anybody that I hurt. I really didn't mean to, but damn it, I'm not fucking kidding.
I don't
I'm not
buy
fucking
this.
around. Okay.
I'm sorry, Irene.
I don't care if you buy it or not, Aiko.
No.
It
That's
doesn't
You're
fair
gonna
matter.
enough.
get fucking
Please,
rinsed
stop.
again. Listen,
Just
Aiko, you wanna
stop.
play?
That's fair
No.
enough.
No,
I'm
I'm
trying to be nice. I apologize.
Guys,
What else do you want me to
guys,
do? I apologize.
Guys,
Okay.
yeah, she apologized.
Yeah, I'm
It's
trying
fair.
I'm trying to simmer
It was
down.
good.
Like Tom said, I'm sorry. Look, Tom's a good friend of mine, and I don't want to fuck up his panel. Okay, I just want to make it nice and spicy, but not too spicy. I know that's you got to strike that balance, and I've been too much on the spicy side, so I totally feel that, and I'll take that feedback and learn from it. Because unlike some other creators out there, I do accept
people right now.
I do
It's not
accept
good.
critique.
Okay, thank you. And I appreciate that. All right, next topic is should the left/right denounce the more radical sections of their movement? Now, I think this is probably going to end up coming down to which side should.
Well, Aiko and Chud have already denounced me, so I don't know. I guess the answer is yes for the left.
No one has
No
denounced
unity
me.
whatsoever, no solidarity. I know
They're not.
swing.
I don't know.
No. They're not denouncing you. They were excited that you were on this panel. They like you. Irene.
Well, okay, let's. Okay,
I
I'm
promise.
sorry.
All right, we're gonna start with Chud Logic this time, and then we'll go to Rob.
Sure. I mean, I think we need to define our terms. What do we mean by radical? Because wanting everyone to have healthcare in the United States is considered radical by some people. For example. So what does radical mean? I think that's an important aspect of this. I think in terms of like, should we hold our side accountable? For me, it's not a social club situation. I don't know everyone on the left. I'm not friends with them all. I think you can hold me accountable for my views and my perspectives and my actions, and that's totally legitimate. That's totally fair enough. If you're going to ask me to, denounce some, 14-year-old Marxist-Leninist who's going on about landlords or whatever, like, I don't feel that that's really my place to denounce that, yeah. I would say, though, that, if you're using, like, certain iconography or you're kind of associating, with certain radical groups, and I think that is something that the right do quite well, is they'll play the card of, like, oh, I'm just a conservative, whilst they play with the sort of the iconography of more radical, more far-right groups. Maybe that's something to be considerate of. But yeah, broadly speaking, I think one should be held accountable for their own actions and their own views, broadly speaking.
Are there actions on the left that you feel you would denounce, or actions that are more common on the left?
Give me an example.
Vivian's lists. Are those bad? From the debate with
doesn't have a list.
Destiny.
What are you
No, it's
talking
we know what we're talking about, Echo.
That's
You might not have seen this.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's what do you call it? Antifa making lists of people that they want to dox because they feel as that though they're Nazis or something like that.
I mean, I've spoken about this on stream.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken about this on stream before. I'm not for vigilante justice. Although I do have heavy critiques of the police and the current criminal justice system, I have concerns about doxing lists, should they exist. And if there was a group of people out there that were making lists of people specifically to dox them, I would speak out against that. Okay, let's see the evidence and we'll talk about it.
All right, let's go to Rob.
Yeah, so I mean, I agree with Chud Logic in the sense that it's a matter of defining terms. I agree with you there. I choose to look at this as basically asking me if I should denounce people on my side that I consider radical. And for me, the clear defining line to that is people that advocate political violence. I've denounced all political violence from the left or right. I've been unabashed about that. And I've constantly told people on the right that it's a mistake to, just because you think that you see people on the left getting away with it, it's not something you should morally or strategically do. I also would denounce people, it depends on what you mean exactly by left or right in this context, but vehement racist and things like that, clearly everyone should be denouncing. And so certainly when that rears its head on the right, we should be doing that. On the left, I would like to see, I'm biased, I'm on the right, but I would like to see more people on the left denounce political violence. It seems that many of them give excuses for why violence in the name of George Floyd or something like that would be acceptable, whereas violence on the right wouldn't be acceptable. I don't like that. I don't like the fact that there are so many people on the left that seek to deplatform people or criticize people for being Nazis or platforming Nazis and then just calling anyone they disagree with a Nazi. So I think we should denounce those sorts of voices because, I really think that if you pay attention to specific situations, you could see that there are people on the left and right that could have a civil conversation, but sometimes the more radical start to interject and get emotional, and it really detracts from the actual overall conversation.
Okay. Danielle, no comment, Chick.
Yeah, I am a big proponent of, a little bit of what Chud Logic might call gatekeeping, in terms of making sure that the people in the left are actually leftists and they're not trying to ship of Theseus right-wing ideas, such as the recent events with Infrared, into the left. Like, so Infrared was a tanky who claimed to be a Marxist-Leninist, right? And already, a little yikesy there, because, effectively, most tankies are genocide, or we are genocide denialists, Holodomor denialists, Stalin fans. Just really not like the actual tanky is not a good. Now there's a meme tanky that's just a hardcore Marxist-Leninist. I don't know if that's different or not, but like Haas pretended to be this kind of thing that's already on the outskirts. But what he actually was more of a third positionist. He was actually kind of trying to sneak Dugin's ideas, of combining fascism and communism into the left, right, without us noticing, and a lot of social conservative values too. So definitely we have to do some gatekeeping. Although I will agree with Chud that it's not a social club, and when somebody's effective at what they do, you probably shouldn't get in their way. Like, yeah, wash bad.
Daniela.
Yes, I think we should denounce radicals on all sides. As a conservative, so to speak, I was very upset about what happened January 6th. I was also very upset about what happened in the summer of 2020. And it bothered me that I found both sides' actions to be abominable. And I was really disappointed that it seemed that the left protected and tried to justify those actions. And everybody with any sort of following, every blue checkmark conservative was like, on January 6th, like, this is awful. I can't believe these people did this. It's terrible. This is not the answer. Political violence is never okay. So everybody should always do it, right? Because communists suck and Nazis suck. They both fucking suck. And so the best thing to do is to keep all of them at bay and away from any sort of power. And I do believe, based on recent events, that I think the right does a little bit of a better job of that than the left does currently. But yes, I think both are equally important to keep out of power. Okay. And thank you for waiting until I was done with my Big Mac and fries over here.
Yeah, the chat was very concerned with whether or not you finished your fries and burger. And then we'll go to Aiko and then American Nacho.
I'm not sure. I guess I have a clarifying question about what did you mean, Daniela? I'm sorry. I heard you say something about the left. Was it in relation to January 6th or no? Or was that separate?
She was talking about the right on January 6th.
Yes. Now they pretty much across the board.
The left do?
Well,
I go. Hold on. This is just supposed to be your statement. Yes,
okay,
and then we'll open it up after.
Hold that thought. Okay. Basically, denouncing things that I would denounce about the left, is that the ultimate question? I'm sorry.
Yeah. You feel as though there are radicals on your side that you should be denouncing.
I feel like radicals are not on my side. People who are making things worse are not on my side. I denounce anyone that sucks. I mean, like, I criticize people on the left all the time when I think that they're full of shit. That's just, I don't care. Like, if you're making things harder for people to have equal rights, then you can, like, go somewhere else and not be around me. Yeah.
All right, American Nacho.
All right. Sorry, I was finishing something. Yeah. So if we're just saying, like, should we denounce them as far as, like, should we not associate with them, or like when they support our campaigns or our politicians or whatever, we should not take that money, that kind of thing. Like, yeah, then I'm there for it. But if we're talking about, like, literally banning them from all the social spaces, then I don't really know what exactly you mean by denounce them, I guess. Like, what does that entail?
I mean, you decide it would. What sort of spaces would you want to push them out of? What sort of groups would you want to push them out of?
Yeah, because, like, I would suggest to anybody on either side of the aisle not to have, like, tankies on your program, not to have, like, neo-Nazis or Nazis and alt-righters on your program, unless you really can. I take Destiny's advice on that. Like, unless you really know everything about their movements and their political takes in and out, and you can really dismantle their arguments and make them look stupid in front of everybody, then you shouldn't platform them in front of hundreds or thousands of people. If you can't effectively dismantle every part of their argument and basically beat them over the head with their own ignorance. Because, so, like, to some degree, I'm like, we shouldn't ban them off of every platform, left or right, just because it's good for them to be in the public space. It's good for people to be able to criticize them and expose them to everyone else and show how stupid their ideas are, or how, you know, bad faith maybe their takes are, etc. So I guess loosely, I would just say I would lean towards, yeah, we should definitely denounce. Both sides, I think, should do a better job of like policing I have to kind of agree with Danny a little bit in that I think currently maybe the right is doing a little bit better of a job of policing their own side, I guess. But in the past, it hasn't always been that way. So it's like we have to keep it up. We have to constantly be policing our own sides and making sure that, you know, the right is policing the right and the left is policing the left, and keep these extremist ideas kind of at bay or whatever, which I think
American
is kind of in the
Nacho,
same.
I was kind of curious, and not to like, I'm not trying to be confrontational anymore, but I was just kind of curious, like, what has the right done to police, you know, let's say the like kind of stuff that we saw on January 6th? Like, I'm not saying that because I'm doubting you. I just want to know what maybe I missed something.
Me and several other, I mean, every other streamer that I know that was kind of in my circle around that time was quick to denounce all of that and be like, this is a terrible thing. This should have never happened. QAnon are idiots. I mean, everybody's basically on the same page there on the right, I think, you know? And then, I mean, if you just want an example of even politicians as recently as Trump, whenever he got that, the donation from, what's his name, from the KKK leader, whatever, he was quick to denounce that on the trail, like before he was even the...
is this 2016?
Yeah, before he was even the nominee for the Republican Party. What's that guy's name?
Man, this is a weird flex. American Nacho, this is a really weird flex.
This is the first thing I thought of.
Oh my God! I'm sorry. I'm not. Listen, I can't be mean. I can't be mean. I'm gonna leave this one alone. Somebody else handle. Chud, Aiko.
If I can, I'll just on that point real quick. There is, and maybe we could have this discussion. There is a difference between we're all streamers, and that's great. I hope all of us do successful, but we certainly have less clout than like politicians or mainstream media people and things like that. And I think clearly, I think in both levels, but clearly at the political level, you could see the rights politicians, media personalities, etc. Every single one that I could think of condemned what happened January 6th. But on the left, we constantly see excuses for the $2.2 billion of rioting that we saw occur from the left. We constantly see excuses for, you know, and one of the problems is the radical positions are becoming more mainstream in the Democratic Party, such as just today they're talking about court packing and things like these. Now, that's not radical in the same way, but I mean, it's radical. They're talking about race-based policies, segregation type policies and things like that. And we see politicians making excuses for political violence when it benefits them. So point me to the right winger that's making excuses for political violence. I'm right there with you. I'm condemning them right there with you. And I see great people on the left that are also condemning political violence. I do. But what troubles me is I see an awful lot of people on the left that make excuses for this political violence.
Can we go back to I wanted to know what Daniela meant about January 6th and the left. Like, I didn't completely.
You wanted to know what she meant by the summer, right?
By
I may have misspoken. I pretty much meant exactly what Rob just said, which is when a bunch of crazy righties, you know, stormed the Capitol. Everybody. I mean, like there's not a blue check mark conservative or Republican who did not say that this was awful and it was not the answer and it was not the right thing to do. As opposed to summer of 2020 when there were riots and lots of people on the left, including politicians, made excuses and actually even encouraged it. And
Yeah.
that was a
I got
pretty
you.
big difference.
Okay, yeah.
Daniela, how can you say that? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Wait, I get what you're saying. I would also argue that when people stormed the Capitol, I started seeing a lot of like conservative media, like Tucker Carlson and others saying like starting to like kind of be like, well, maybe it could be like Antifa, like that kind of thing. So they're like, but it wasn't.
No,
right?
it
Like
wasn't.
they're clear with that, right?
Yeah.
At this point, okay.
there was at first, there was like, and actually Elijah Schaefer, who works for Blaze TV, he actually was there, like boots on the ground when this was happening, and a lot of people were sending in pictures, and they were like, this guy's from Antifa and this girl's from Antifa, and he was like, no guys, they're not, sorry. So there was that theory floating around, but I think that was pretty quickly squashed.
Okay. Yeah. I saw people try to throw that out there. It didn't stick. I've been surprised with the specific people. I guess, I mean, you never know what individual takes are going to be like. But I think that it is the reason that people stormed the Capitol is not the same reason that Black Lives Matter protests happened. Right?
Of course not. If I could just ask a quick question, does everyone on the right here condemn violence they saw January 6th?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
We all can. Does everyone on the left condemn the violence we saw from Antifa and Black Lives Matter throughout the spring and summer last year, and we're still seeing today?
A lot of it came from the police, actually.
Anyone else?
I feel. Wait a second.
I want a specific example, Rob.
I feel like
I want
we
to
can...
say no.
Sorry, go on.
It's not that. Okay, no, you're right. I shouldn't go off on this thing. I will say that violence is definitely bound to happen when you have large groups of people. The vast majority was peaceful. I saw, when it was happening, I saw like the street that I used to work on. It was just like at the beginning of Tribeca, which is like the wealthiest neighborhood in Manhattan, I think, and like right on the edge of like Canal Street. This might not make sense to anyone. But anyway, so there was basically like a line of a bunch of police officers in like blocking the street that would go into the Tribeca neighborhood, and there were just peaceful protesters that were like kneeling, and they had their hands up, and then all of a sudden like a guy comes running from the back of the officers, and it was just like started like pushing, started like literally just ran over people and started arresting them. And it was...
Can I rephrase my because the thing is, we could talk about the specific situation, who was at fault, the police or whatever. Well, everyone on the left at least admit here that there were many times where it wasn't the police fault, that it was groups on the left like Antifa.
Can we just agree that political violence is wrong, right?
Okay.
Yeah, can we just say that?
Wait. Let me give me a chance. Right. So let me ask you a question. You say political violence is wrong, and I will answer your question, Rob. Okay. Yes. Do you support the police or think the police serve a function in society?
Yeah, giving the monopoly of use of force to police and to the state was probably the smartest thing.
Okay, so you support. That's fine. That's all I need. You support political violence as well. That's fine. But you support political violence.
That's not political, though. Like,
of course it is.
How is it political?
What, violence enforced by the state, by state apparatus? Of course, that's political violence.
But what's their motive? Like, what's their
to maintain the power of the state? I mean, it's fairly obvious.
But anyway, we could argue the semantics of it. But the point is just real quick: the state using force is different than vigilantes using that force. That's a completely different situation.
Wait. Sorry,
you don't want the state to have this much power, right?
I just wanted to point that out to you because that's an inconsistency there. Okay, you say that you're against political violence, but you support the state apparatus. Sorry, go on.
Hold on, let me clarify real quick.
Those should be.
He is saying though, like if there are anarchists who don't believe there should be a state, they believe a state is political, right? And so anybody who reinforces the state, like politicians, like police officers, like the military, they would that is therefore political violence.
But in any case, the only reason I say that is to point out the fact that often people won't consider the inherent violence of our current political system, and they'll ignore it whilst talking about violence from other people. Anyway, I'll answer your question, Rob, okay? So, you're comparing apples and oranges, but what I will say is this. Do I support some small business owner's property getting burnt to the ground? No, I don't think that's good. Of course, I'm against that, okay? But the thing is, it's about questioning why are people in a position to do that in the first place? Why are they in a position where they're going to go and burn a building down, right? I would even say the same thing about the Capitol building. Why were these people in a position where they went and stormed the Capitol building? Because of propaganda, right? Because they were fed propaganda and they believed they were going to go and, destroy this false election which had happened, which is obviously totally nonsense. However, what I would point to is the reason we're comparing apples and oranges, okay, is that the reasons for the people, going into the Capitol building is, which is essentially off the back of false propaganda, but inevitably is to overturn the results of a legitimate election. That's very different to people kind of lashing out violently against their own oppression.
Again, what I would argue, just real quick.
Argument, though. Sorry, I just want to. I know you're not trying to be elitist, but I feel like it's so elitist to say like, oh, going against the government, this symbol of American government, is so much worse than burning down business owners' property. It's like, what? No, it's. I mean, I'm sorry, maybe like symbolically, but. I feel worse for the business owners. I do, especially because so many of them were minority business owners.
Listen, I don't listen.
Whether or not they were minority, they worked their entire lives to build those businesses.
I'm sorry, but I feel you're morally grandstanding here. I feel like you're morally grandstanding here, right?
Major virtue signals. Yeah,
but
you're right, Chad.
You're morally grandstanding. I agree with you. Listen, I said at the start that I think it's bad if a small person's business gets burnt down. Now look, I've got some fairly differing perspectives on the Capitol building, right? I saw like some blue checkmark taking photos of cigarette butts going, oh look, they were smoking in the Capitol building. Now look, what happened at the Capitol building was bad. I don't deny that, okay? However, I would just point out that, yeah, sure, there's some stuff there which is maybe a bit ridiculous. Of course, the impact of what happens to a small business owner is much bigger than what happened at the Capitol building. And that's why I said at the start, that is bad. However, I do still think it's important to ask questions about why people are in a position to do that in the first place. And that's more important than just looking at the outcome and going, oh, we need to denounce this is bad.
If I can, so the problem I have with it, I don't disagree with you that we should, in any situation where people feel disenfranchised, whether it be right wing, left wing, specific groups, it's incumbent on us to look at the reasons they might feel that way. Are they true? Are they false? Is it from propaganda? I agree, all that's good. But the problem I have is this: you saw a quick condemnation from everyone on the right with right wing violence, and then when you ask the left, there's always this. Well, yeah, technically, I think a lot of this is bad, but we have to look at the reasons and blah, blah, blah. And the problem is this.
That's
what ends up
nuance.
happening is
if I might ask you a question.
Well, it's not just nuance.
My problem with you,
just real quick.
I want to answer your question, though, Rob, but I need some help.
Just real quick, if I could finish.
Okay.
No one's interrupting except you. So,
I know,
So
Rob.
the point is,
I'm a bad lady. I say mean things.
No,
we clarified it though, and we said, can we agree that all political violence is bad? And still, we went off onto like, well. Right. Maybe.
And that's
how
the
can
problem.
we disagree that political violence is wrong?
Hold on. Let's let Rob finish, and then we'll go
ahead, Rob.
It'll be real quick. So the worry I have is, even if the people on this panel, which we'll get more directly in this, would say, yes, all political violence is bad, when we start saying, but we have to look at the motivation when deciding how bad that political violence is, the problem is everyone that commits this sort of violence thinks that they have the rationale to do it. That's why we need to condemn the tactic instead of relying on the fact of, well, if you could prove that you've been aggrieved more than another group, then perhaps your violence is more justified. So I'm not saying you're saying that, but it seems like when you're just unwilling to come right out and say, yeah, all of this violence is bad, that's the sort of stuff that it leads to.
Okay, Rob, can I offer you another explanation for what's going on when we are like hemming and hawing? Because I know that's frustrating to you, and I want to like connect here, right? So what if it is that you are not offering us a specific act of violence to condemn, and we're kind of wondering, because we've seen the Andy No stuff, we've seen the Tim Pool stuff, we've seen a bunch of shit that looks bad for Antifa, that looks bad for the left, but when you peel the skin back, you really realize it's just a fucking setup and a false flag. Project Veritas is a great example of this. So, I mean, not in terms of violence, but what I'm asking you is like,
what about the CNN reporter that was just attacked today? Like literally, within the last 20 hours.
Well, you are asking me about a new news story that I did not read yet, so I can't comment. Sorry. Does anybody else want to take that? But
I'm not sure about that.
Do we know about this incident?
I want to be clear though.
And since when do the right wingers care about CNN reporers?
Okay,
CNN
didn't
care about it.
The reason
CNN
why
didn't report it.
Oh, I think you do.
With what Chad said, I want to be clear. He wasn't defending violence. at all,
Yeah.
but that there are systemic issues that we need to look at to see why is it the way that it is. Because
That's
there are
fine
reasons.
though. That's
It's
reasonable
still
though. Like
right,
no
and
one
we
disagrees
know
with that. It's
right,
just that
except
the
it
way of getting there. Like okay, like the whole thing of like a lot of the people who are like ACAB, knee jerk ACAB, really are just like, oh well, we're just trying to bring attention to like the injustices in the police in the criminal justice system, and we want to push for reform and da 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 da. Like that's reasonable. Why not take that stand? Like why come out and say like ACAB and just go full on like I get it, it's for like the shock value and you want to get people to view your stuff and then you could push that stuff. But you can just push that stuff already. I think everybody on the
yeah.
right and the left would agree that we could use some kind of reform in our criminal justice system. And you
Right,
would win
and
more
I
people
mean
to your side from the moderate and center, which is where I place myself most of the time. Like you're not winning me over by screaming ACAB.
right.
But if you say
What I
police
wanna
reform,
say
I'm down. Sorry.
I wanna say ACAB is specifically it's not targeted at you, it's not targeted like, I don't use, ACAB rhetoric, but, I understand ultimately what it means is that, like, you can't be a part of the you can't be a cop and be a part of that system without taking an oath to uphold some laws that are unjust. So that's like ultimately what that means. I think that educative rhetoric is good to have because it does speak to some people, but obviously not everyone, which is why people should just speak to the people that they can relate to about their ideas. So it's not about selling people on it that are on the other side at the moment.
All right, real quick, Rob. Earlier, you asked everybody to denounce like all political violence on both sides.
Yeah.
Like our nation was pretty much founded on political violence. Do you not think that there's a point that you can get to where political violence is justified? Because you guys also felt as though they were justifying too much or talking about whether or not political violence was justified. So are you condemning political violence across the board, or do you feel as though there's a point you could get to where you think political violence is justified?
So there's a question on whether or not situations like we saw with the founding fathers would be able to be done in a landscape that we have today. My feeling is that most apolitical warfare at this point is going to be done through information. So I question the morality or the strategicness of doing something like the revolution that we saw. But yes, certainly the revolution was justified. The problem is this: for every one time that we could point to in history and say, here was a time where we had a political, this sort of political violence that was justified, there are literally tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of time where people have used that exact example to say, this justifies me doing what I'm doing now. So if we look at like what No Comment Chick was saying there, she talks about a specific incident. I could give many specific incidents. The Chaz Zone that happened there, which resulted in the death of at least one African-American minor, May 31st outside the White House, where people lit fires, including at a church in D.C., and then tried to storm into the White House, were held back by the Secret Service, up until events that we saw yesterday, the day before, etc. No Comment Chick says, well, Andy, no, blah, blah, blah. The reality is there was $2.2 billion worth of damage in these riots. And to pretend
900
like,
officer
okay,
right.
Hey, Rob, you said my name, so I'm going to jump in here. So sure. I got to ask you about a specific incident that I'm like kind of wondering about. I kind of feel bad about, do you remember the auto zone that was burned down? The auto zone, there's a picture of a guy
way back, way
back early. Like that's one that I would say like that was fucked up. What happened? Like that person, would you so there you go. Specific example. The neo-Nazi that did that and tried to frame the protesters. Yeah, he was a bad guy.
Yeah, is this Umbrella guy?
Did you not know that? Yeah, the Umbrella guy. They fucking found him. They fucking found him. All right, so there's a lot of things where at first it was portrayed as like, oh, geez, Antifa, they're doing like really bad things.
It was them as well.
You find out it's literally a false flag. Literally, what you guys have just set us up. Now here's one more thing. Just I'll get off after this. All right, one more question for you. Okay, the reason that we're a little bit like iffy on you guys about this is like you say these things, but at the same time we wonder if you're really like against the people who did the January 6th shit. Or if you're just like, you're just, are you sorry or are you just sorry you got caught? Like, it's what we're asking. And really what this comes down to is like, how come nobody would hold Trump responsible for what happened? How come there was he was not responsible in any way?
Right. That's exactly what
This
he
is why
did
we
not
can't take
call
your
for-
shit seriously.
Okay,
Okay,
so real
This is
quick,
why
I
there's
could
no,
respond to
like,
this.
look,
See if
I'd
I
like
can
to talk
maybe
to
jumping
good
off
faith
to this.
actors,
You made a
Rob,
point
but
to me.
you've
Jumping
got
off
a
to
double
this.
standard.
I would like to respond to this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Trump wasn't responsible. He didn't incite. If he did incite, then the Nation of Islam and Barack Obama and the Congressional Black Caucus that took photos with their leader, Louis Farrakhan, are responsible for the Capital City police officer that was murdered just last week. Did they incite that riot? Did all of the people that talk about the issues of Black Lives Matter and systemic racism in this country, did they incite the violence that resulted in that Capital City
Rob,
officer
there's a
being
lot
killed?
more direct line between Trump and what happened in those riots than there is between Barack Obama
anyways,
and the fucking the person that was president. Are you still on Obama derangement syndrome?
Right.
That's what is that? 2016?
No, I'm not on Obama derangement syndrome. I'm saying that the level for what constitutes
What
incitement,
about his
we
tan
actually
suit,
have.
Rob? Does that
Again,
trigger
real
you?
quick,
Okay, let's-
we have like Maxine Waters
What about
saying
the
that we
cappuccino?
should
Let's stay on-
chase people out of events. We should go after
Did he spy
Republicans,
on
things
Trump,
like that.
do you
We've had
think? Did
Democrats
Obama
really
spy on
say.
Trump?
I mean, again, you're deflecting because you can't hold a coherent
Oh,
thought.
am I
You're
guest
getting
galloping,
blown up.
Rob? Am I guest galloping?
Okay,
Are you going to accuse
can
me of
I-
guest
can I
galloping?
jump
Here we
in?
go.
Can I
The
just jump in?
fucking
All right,
I
master.
just wanted to say one quick
Pupil
point, and then I
becomes the
promise
master,
Chad, you
Rob.
can come in.
Fallen Titans,
I just
2021,
wanted to say real
motherfucker.
quick.
All right, Rob, go ahead
she
and
might
finish, and then
question.
we'll go to Chud Logic.
Yeah, go ahead.
Did you say me?
Yeah.
Just real quick,
Yeah,
I'll finish.
Rob.
I
You're actually
just
nervous.
want to say, like, you can question our motivations. That's fine. You have every right to do that. Everyone can do that. But at least we were willing to, on point, say, yeah, we condemn the violence. We still haven't heard that from you. Instead, we've heard
You
excuses
said
that
you condemn the violence, but I
Right.
wonder what would have happened.
you won't
if
even
it,
go
like,
that
the shoe
far.
would have been on
You
the
won't
other
even
foot.
go that. Right, you won't even go that
Like,
far.
we don't
So-
know if you're traitors or not. This is the truth
Gotcha.
of the matter. We don't know which side you're really on.
Well,
And
we have a pretty
suspect
good idea what you
had they
are.
won,
What does that mean?
had they won, well, we suspect that had they won, had they like succeeded in tying up all of the elected officials and like and frustrating the will of the American people, I don't know if you guys would be supporting them. I kind of think you would. I kind of think you'd fall right into line under an authoritarian Trump system. I don't see you becoming comrades. I don't see you coming out in the street to fight with us.
All right.
I
That's
see
because
you
you're
holding
you're one of the
fucking
chair.
you're one of
Okay.
the radicals that
All
they
right,
should
all right,
condemn.
all
So
right.
of course
Yes,
I'm not going to
I'm
fight with you.
I'm the CEO of
guys.
Antifa right here.
Okay.
Hold on. We're
Right.
going to go to Chud Logic.
Okay, so I just want to go a little bit back to American Nacho's point. Now, listen, I agree that ACAB could be a confusing term because it's supposed to be a systemic critique, but it sounds like it's making a moral, criticism of each individual police officer. I get that. Okay.
I mean, that's exactly what it's doing, though.
Well, if you
I mean,
actually,
it's
No,
all
wait.
cops are bastards. That's what it stands for.
Yeah, no,
So I mean, you're not. Who are you winning over by that? Like,
Well, sure.
And how
but
do
the
you
thing is-
misinterpret that?
But the thing is, okay, here's the issue, right? ACAB isn't necessarily designed as like a motto that's designed to be like hashed out on a panel. But anyway, listen, I concede to you that ACAB can be confusing, okay? Now, here's what I want to say though, right? We're very quick to talk about, the riots and the violence and stuff like that, and we are so focused on the violence of the protesters, the rioters, whatever, but we don't think to question, well, why are they acting violently? And in case of the protests last summer, it does go back to the question of like the police and the role they play in society. And I appreciate what you're saying about monopoly on the use of violence, and I accept that to some degree. However, that in itself isn't an argument. What we need to ask is, how are police using this monopoly on violence? Are they using it fairly? Are they using it correctly? I don't think they are, and that's why you saw the violence that you saw last
how
summer.
you do that? You get representatives elected that can change the policies and change the way that officers operate. Like, you don't go burn down the streets. Like, and that's what I was going to say earlier when you said that about, well, if you support the police, then you still basically you support political violence. Like, well, maybe to a degree you support the state's monopoly on political violence or on violence, but it's like, it's not supposed to be political, because they're supposed to be representing the people to a degree, because you're electing officials. If those officials legislate for your state, for your county, for your town, for your local municipality, for all the way down to the local level, and you get to play a part by voting in how the system is structured, because you're going to vote in people who are representing you, and then what the laws they're going to be passed are. You know what I mean?
Okay, let me ask
So
you.
it's even close to like vigilante political justice.
Well, let me ask you a question, okay? Let's say, for the sake of argument, that you were on the floor and a police officer had a boot on your throat. How would you feel if someone came along and said, "Don't worry, you can just vote to stop that from happening"?
I mean, again, There's a difference,
does
right?
the
There's a
officer have
difference
to do that?
between you personally defending yourself with unnecessary violence being applied on you at a moment versus rioting and looting stores afterwards.
okay, but
right? And if I could just,
I don't really know how or why a police would just have their boot on my neck. Like I don't do anything to be in those positions. So, I mean,
Like using a counterfeit
if
$20
if
bill.
someone just came
He fought with
into my
police.
home and busted down my door and put a boot on my neck, then I would fight back.
Okay, let me make it a bit clearer, okay? The point that I'm making is that for some of these people, it's, you know, because you're talking about just vote away the problems. For some people, these problems are so immediate that voting isn't necessarily going to solve them quickly enough to resolve the issues that they're facing. Now,
I mean, at the local level, a lot of the times it will.
Stealing
You can
a
get
TV
sheriffs
from
out.
Target well?
does that justify? Listen, does that justify someone going and burning down someone's small business? No, of course not. But it maybe goes some way to explaining why that happens.
well, that's
I mean,
absolutely true.
we all-
Hey,
Okay.
also,
Yeah,
let's
if I
not
can
think.
real quick,
Oh, go ahead, Rob.
Drop of a fly. It
You're
really
right.
does. During natural disasters, people just do that. Like when I owned a business with a storefront, like we put up for Hurricane Sandy, we put up things. What the fuck do you call it? My brain isn't working. We put up
Bollards
boards
or-
in the windows
Okay.
to like
Barricades.
keep looters from coming in, because that's just like how it is. So we don't know if they had participated in the protests or they were just opportunists. And I'm sure that in some cases it was, one or the other or both, right? But those are like ultimately individuals. Yeah.
All right,
But
we're gonna go to
if I can-
Daniela real quick. Is
My
she
goodness,
frozen?
what are we talking about?
Bit of a
Okay.
robot.
I don't know. I was
You just
peeing.
rebut to what you
So-
were going to talk about
Sorry,
earlier.
Daniela's like 3
Logic.
seconds behind us, so
I'm here.
go ahead, Daniela.
Well, what exactly are we talking about now?
Oh, you
Lagging pretty bad.
I'm having trouble too with people's sound. Can everybody do a test real quick?
Test.
Testing.
Yeah.
Oh,
Mic check.
mic check.
Everybody sounds good.
Hello.
Daniela's just lagging a little bit.
Oh, Discord. Or it's not Discord. It's StreamYard.
Can you see me moving?
Oh, you're
Yeah,
good now.
yeah, you're good
yeah.
now. Go ahead.
Oh wait.
So what are we talking about at this point? Sorry, there's been a lot of conversations.
Chud, I
So,
think you were about to respond. You were
um,
about to respond to what Chud Logic had just said, but
That's what I was going to do as well. But you can go wherever, I guess.
Yeah, if you don't have anything, go ahead, Rob.
if you remember.
Okay, yeah, so there's a couple things I want to say. I don't disagree with Chud, and I think we've all been saying this the entire time. We should be looking at the reasons that people riot. We should be looking at reasons that people feel disenfranchised. That's different than whether or not we should also call out the radicals, which is the topic. And so, like, I just find it hilarious that we're seeing people on the left parse words and say, "No, wait a minute. The people saying all cops are bastards. Perhaps they're not perhaps we could look at that in a nuanced view. No, that's radical, and that should be condemned. That's the way it is." I also disagree with Chud Logic that we don't have these conversations. Like, I hear this all the time from the left. Well, the riot's the voice of the unheard, and no one's talking about these issues. You can't buy ice cream without talking about these issues. You can't turn on
I'm a little
Netflix
confused,
without
though.
these issues being discussed. So I just disagree. Like, there's this
Who
constant
are the
narrative that we're not
radicals, though,
talking
Rob?
about it, and we certainly are. We're talking about it all the time.
So, Rob, is the guy running out of Target with the TV, is that the radical? Like, who's the radical? Point me out to the radicals, because this is the thing. You always, like, say, condemn this shit, and I'm like, what shit, where? And you're like, you point to this big, shadowy figures. There's the boogeyman coming out, and I'm like, I don't know, that sounds pretty scary to me, bro. Like, if that's a real thing, like, yeah, that shouldn't exist, but, like, you're not, like, showing me anything. You're just showing me, like, yeah, fucking Target got robbed, all right? So, like, are you telling me that everybody that went in there and grabbed a TV is a fucking anarchist, like, radical? I don't fucking think so. I think there's probably conservatives in there running out with TVs, unironically. So, like,
Okay.
what exactly do you mean? Who are the radicals? Like,
Okay, so
are these
there's two
radicals in the room with us right now, Rob? That's what I really want to know. Like, do they
Okay.
live in your head, or are you talking about real shit here, bro?
Okay, so there's two
But there's
things
no
that we could
radical
say.
in
There's
black.
different definitions of radical, right? The first is
Okay.
any sort of political violence and theft and stuff like that. I would say that's a radical, and that they should be condemned. If it's a right winger looting, yes, condemn them. If it's a left winger looting, yes, condemn them. Period. Second, there are radicals that don't necessarily have to engage in violence or looting. Those could be people that are saying things like all cops are bastards or adapting positions like that. For example, let me give you an example that maybe you're familiar with. If someone's brought onto a panel to talk about trans issues and they're talking about research that
Here we
occurs in the trans
go.
community,
Here we go.
and you call them
Yeah.
a Nazi, then you're a radical, and that should be rejected. And
wait.
people on the left should reject.
Oh, I
that.
thought you were
That's-
talking about me for a second there, but
Well,
no.
I think
Oh, no,
all
I'm
of
just
this,
saying
all of this
hypothetically.
on
So, wait, I
all
didn't do
sides is kind
that.
of getting, all this rhetoric is kind of getting abused at some point. Like everyone just instantly calling everybody a racist, everybody calling them a Nazi, like throwing out this thing saying that that everything is Jim Crow and that this is all systemic racism. You're like abusing the word, the power of the word. And then it loses all of its meaning because you're just throwing it around willy nilly. Like everyone on the right calling everybody on the left a communist, like doesn't, you take away the power of the word because you're just using it all the time. Like everybody isn't a communist because they're on the left. Everybody isn't a Nazi because they're on the right. And the more that we let all these people like just throw all this stuff around, the less meaning it gets. Like when people call someone a racist now, I don't even blink an eye because I'm like, we'll see.
Hey, spicy take, American Nacho. I'm gonna agree with you on that. Okay, like yeah, there is too much of this idea, and a lot of it comes from like, strangely enough, like not an overemphasis on social justice, but an incomplete understanding of social justice. So sometimes people will take something like the idea of systemic racism, which is the idea that racism doesn't just exist in the hearts of the evil Klansmen and stuff like that, but it also kind of gets into our own biases like implicitly. It doesn't mean we're bad people, but it means that we kind of got like skewed perspectives. So in other words, when we see a black kid as a white person or anyone in society, we tend to think of them as being older and bigger and more of a threat than they really are. This causes us to react differently. So when we talk about that, some people get confused and they say, yeah, you're a racist. Like they'll call out implicit racism and they'll be like, yeah, so you're a racist, you're a fascist. It'll go right down the line. And that is absolutely fucking toxic. That is absolutely a misapprehension. But I don't think that the answer is like, whoa, back away from this crazy social justice stuff. I think this answer is to actually learn the real version of it instead of the pared down, like dumbed down media version of it. So yeah, but I'm kind of agreeing with you here. So yeah.
I mean, the point is when we're talking about critical race theory and things like that, if people just want to say there are systemic inequities and things like that based on race, that's one thing. If people want to use it to reject people of a certain skin color, yes, that's radical. That should be rejected. That is
Wait,
racism.
Sorry, Rush,
No
what do you
one's
mean?
Rejecting like what, white people?
Right, rejecting whiteness, saying all white people are racist. All
Oh,
white
like the
people are
Coca-Cola
I would like
thing?
to clarify.
No,
that
not to that.
a
I
lot
don't.
of
The
people-
Coke.
No, a lot of people
Be
think
less
that
white.
whiteness,
Yeah.
a lot of people aren't clear on what like whiteness is. Like
Right.
whiteness isn't a person. Whiteness is a worldview that we are all born into, which is that we associate things with like a white racial identity with things that are normal. Like that's what the standard is, whether it's like culture, just holidays, whatever. You know what I mean?
Is that how it's
Everything
always
else is
applied, though?
Measured.
I mean, the majority of the population in the
compared
country
to
is
it.
white, so that's what things people are mostly advertising to.
Well,
If
it's
that's what you're
not
talking about, the
just-
left view and all this stuff that's normalized.
But
Like,
there
I mean, the
is
problem
also
is-
not really.
Okay.
Like,
The problem is we
white-
hear this a
if
lot.
I was in
right?
Africa, I'm sure in an African country, I would probably see, everybody on TV is going to be brown and black. Those are going to be all the supermodels. Those are going to be all the main, stream television, casters and
Sorry,
All right,
I mean,
Just-
that's
We're
the
gonna
problem.
let-
Go
hold
ahead,
on. We're gonna let Chad Logic finish this one out, and then we'll move on to the last
okay,
topic.
that's fair enough. I feel like we're being a little bit reductive here. What Iko's saying is correct. What I'd say on top of that as well is whiteness is an academic term, and look, I appreciate speaking about academic terms, like Jesus Christ, let's just talk plainly about what's going on in the world and try and understand one another, But I think it's kind of funny that we're going to talk about this diversity training in Coke. I presume that's what Rob is referencing, which I spoke out about and said, well, I that's the kind of thing you're talking about. I know the kind of thing you're talking about, and I've spoken out against this kind of stuff. Anyway, final point is I feel like the final thing I'll say is this, right? So I've got two boys, twin boys. They're always fighting. constantly fighting. Okay, it's never ending. They're, one of my boys' faces is red raw, where he's been pinched and bitten by the other one. Okay, now if I hear them fighting, okay, and I go into the room, I don't know what's happened. If I take the person that I see committing the violence and I, go hard for them and like, what are you doing? Why are you hitting your brother? And then it turns out that actually it's the other one that started it and it's the other one that's hit the brother first. Well, that's the person that I need to be criticising, and that's the person that I need to be looking at, to offer my sort of discipline to, or whatever you want to call it, right? And I think, more broadly, I'm simplifying it a bit, but more broadly, we can look at that within our current political system. We've got the state and the police that enact violence upon citizens. When the citizens lash out and push back, that's the thing we've got to denounce. That's the thing we've got to criticise. How about, we start off by criticising the institutions, the police and the government first. That's it.
All right, cool.
Can
I don't know. You're roboting again.
Just wants to respond to that.
You can try.
Yeah, I want to respond to it, but
You're good now.
okay. Okay, great. Thank you. I think the difference in that is, yes, if one son hits the other and the other hits him back, the one who hit first is the wrong one. But the problem, at least in that case, the retaliation was to the person who committed the act to begin with. Your other son didn't walk down the street and punch his best friend. He punched his brother, who punched him first. So if we're going to talk about that, and I'm not saying I support that either way, but it's a little bit of a different situation.
I mean,
Because
sure, I'm talking about
when somebody commits a terrible act, like if Derek Chauvin is found to in fact be guilty of murder based on the physical evidence available in a trial, then he is punished as the person who committed the act. And I am all for that all day long. What I'm not for is other police officers who engaged in no such act and business owners who had nothing to do with this suffering the consequences. That's the problem with the behavior.
Well, the thing about like business owners and police officers, you can't put them in the same category. The police officers are supposed to be the ones that, I mean, it depends on what vantage point you're looking at, but these people that are supposed to be protecting us are not, and they're actually like killing a lot of people and harming a lot of people. And so, but it's not just limited to the police, it's also, in the way that, like the police arrest Black and brown people, like to fight. Okay, I apologize. I didn't sleep last night. At a much higher rate, the sentences, they're convicted at a much higher rate. They are sentenced way harsher than white people that do the exact same things. That's all part of the system, and it's not any one individual cop's fault. Although, like in Derek Chauvin's case, I think that he is, I think he's exactly. I don't want to say anything to you, Ass. Oh wait, we're not even on Twitch. I don't know what I can and can't see on YouTube.
You can call people simps. You can call people. What are we going to do on here?
So Derek Chauvin is a simp for murder. I would like to I think that I can stand by that. But yeah, so it's not just people going after like your uncle or father or brothers, like they are all like bastards.
Okay. We do have to move on, but I interrupted Rob and then let everybody else end up going. So Rob, you can go ahead and finish it out.
Can I hurry up and interrupt? All political violence is bad.
Right.
Yeah,
I agree with that. And I'll just
Yes.
say real quick, like even at the end here, we could see sort of kind of tongue in cheek, or like a wink and a nod to, well, that left political violence. That's for a good reason and something like this. I mean, it's just terrible. The idea that the police are as bad as it's being made out isn't true. Like, Akiko, I'd love to have a conversation with you about discrepancies
It's
in law
Aiko.
enforcement.
Rob. Her name's Aiko.
Aiko,
Yeah,
sorry.
sorry.
I would love to. Yeah, no problem. I'd love to have a conversation with you about it at some point. We could see, for example, that the disparity between men and women in law enforcement interactions is 6 times worse than the disparity between blacks and whites. So if we could understand the need for riots because black people supposedly being mistreated by police, certainly we would understand 6 times worse riots from men, but we don't see that. The point is, even in Chud Logic's hypothetical here, we just have to say that we have to condemn this sort of violence. No one's against having the conversation of are the reforms we can make with the police better and things like that. And lastly, just the idea of whiteness. It would be nice if that's how it's used in the academic sense, but we could see over and over, including in training with federal agencies and in academia, that we're specifically saying all white people are racist, we're segregating white people, we're telling white people to apologize, etc. So it's even if you three are all using reject whiteness in the pure academic sense, which is noble, I guess, that's not how it's applied in the real world.
So Rob, are you in favor of like more social justice and education just so people understand these concepts a little bit better and they don't have this like reductive version of it that you're complaining about? Because that's what you're complaining about. You're not complaining about actual social justice. You're complaining about some lefties that like are a little bit lazy and don't quite learn it and get like this weird stereotyped essentialized version of it of just like white bad, right? Or that, like I always say, like this idea that white straight cis men are the Dio Brandos of oppression, and they're not. There's some of my best friends, and like, you know, I'm not going to essentialize them like that. Not everybody's one way. Just because you have privilege doesn't mean that you can't, like, you know, become aware of that privilege and actually be an awesome ally to you know, to leverage that in service of bring about equality. So yeah, no, I totally feel you, Rob.
I'll just say this real quick to respond to that. Every group has some sort of privilege and every group has some sort of detriment, but we only call on certain groups to have that privilege. And if you want to learn more about this, look at left-wing professors like Jonathan Haidt, James McWhorter, Brett and Eric Weinstein that all talk about the toxicity of critical race theory.
Okay, we do have to move on now. I'm sorry.
Specifically on like you know, the implementation of
Aiko, I need to make a rule that you're not allowed to talk about whiteness on here.
Listen, Tom, I made you an emote. Shush.
Okay. All right.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't tell you to shush on your own panel. I would
Go
just
ahead.
like to say that those programs that you're talking about, like making white people apologize to like people, no, that's dumb. It's just,
the
like,
8
no one,
white identities that was pushed in like the New Jersey schools or whatever that was.
It's like,
little
you know, do you remember when
image where-
Pelosi kneeled? Like,
Yes.
yeah, exactly. It's like cringe.
That was really cringe.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
and the
Cringe
garbs that they're
permitted.
wearing, like from a tribe that currently practices like slave trading or something like that, and they just were like clueless.
Yeah, I don't know about that part, but like, yeah,
Idiots.
it is. They do cringe things. The people that are implementing those things, they're basically doing it because they know there's a problem, but they don't like go to the right places to figure it out. So that's definitely a thing to criticize and reevaluate. Yeah, I just wanted to.
I don't want to tell you what to do with your panel, but I feel like there's an opportunity here for Aiko to talk to our conservative panelists about, you know, the concept of you know, white guilt is sort of what we're touching on, and I think that Aiko might have some views on that would surprise our right-wing panelists. Do you, and like I'll shut up, but like just an idea.
Yeah, I would definitely be down for like one-on-ones in the future. This is just not like the right space for that,
Well,
and
let
that
Tom
would also
decide that,
take
Aiko,
way
but
more
yeah,
time.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. We'll move on to the next topic.
I'd show
Anybody
up
who
for
wants
that
to
though.
stick around
I'll say that.
after-
I'd definitely show up for that.
Yeah, anybody want to stick around after? Some people are probably on a time limit, so we got to get to this last topic. So the last one is the new law or the new voting laws passed in Georgia.
Senate Bill 202.
Georgia passed a new law with added precautions like photo ID for absentee ballots, bans on ballot drop boxes outdoors or after business hours, and restricts early voting in runoff elections, and even criminalizes giving food or water to voters standing in line. Are these restrictions necessary for safe and secure elections? This time we will start with let's see, where did we go last time? I think we started, we'll start with Dan, no comment chick, then go to Danielle.
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty hard to defend, and I don't feel like I feel like I'm more interested in hearing what the conservatives have to say in terms of why this might be necessary. You asked me if I think that it might help in any way, like secure our more fair elections, or prevent I don't even know what the fucking excuse for this is, because it seems pretty blatant to me that the right wing got rinsed this election cycle because more people were able to vote, and when that happened, they kind of just more people. This is a known phenomenon. The more people that vote, the less likely the right wing is to win. I think this is their response to it. Their attempt to hold on to power, even though they couldn't even hold on to the state of Georgia. They're going to try to gerrymander. They're going to try to manipulate the vote. They're going to try to suppress the vote. And this is more of that. They want to make sure that less of you vote. So notice that. And if you believe in people having self-determination, conservatism is not your political philosophy.
All right, we'll go to Daniela.
Okay. So I had a hard time understanding what in here is actually eliminating people's right to vote. I tend to think that saying that having ID is bad for minorities is really racist. Like, it's not difficult to get an ID. And I think that minorities are fully capable of doing so. That's my opinion. I guess I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. The whole no food or water, it's not really true. All they said was only the polling officials can provide water. They don't want third-party groups providing food and water and being like, vote for so-and-so, vote for so-and-so, here's your barbecue. That seems really reasonable.
You think people are being bribed with barbecue?
Hold on. It's opening statement.
Sorry. I'm just like...
You're not allowed to campaign within 150 yards, feet, what have you, of a polling station. And so allowing people, third parties, to provide food could end up being sort of a form of campaigning. So I understand that and why they did that. The hours, I thought it was really dishonest how the left, some members of the left were saying that, they're restricting the hours from 9 to 5. It's like, no, they're not. The old law said normal business hours. Well, normal business hours are not concretely defined. And this law decided to concretely define them as 9 to 5 or 7 to 7. It's up to the polling place. It's up to the county. They made Saturdays mandatory, 2 Saturdays a month, and Sundays optional. None of that was previously in the law. And I just didn't see, maybe the Dropbox thing could be an issue, but honestly, that's going to be more of an issue in rural areas where people tend to vote right, because it's like 1 per 100,000 voters. And so that's going to be an issue for rural voters, not for, inner city people. If you're worried about, people in the cities and such. So I had a hard time finding something about the bill that was truly egregious, to be honest.
All right, Chud Logic.
Yeah, sure. In order for democracy, or what we call liberal democracy, to function, it's important that people that are eligible are able to vote in a very easy, simple way, but doing so in a way that doesn't present the chances of fraudulent voting happening. Based on the data that we've got, it doesn't really seem like there's a significant issue with fraudulent voting in the United States. So I guess it just doesn't really make sense to me that we would need to put in place what essentially are more barriers to people being able to vote. And I think you're being dishonest if you would say that this doesn't in some way create barriers to being able to vote. It seems to me like this legislation is specifically targeted in such a way. Like, for example, when we're talking about, not being able to give out food and drink, and it could be done election officials, that's only really going to be an issue in urban areas where queues are bigger and polling takes longer, as an example off the top of my head. But yeah, I just think that there isn't really any need to present any further barriers to people being able to vote. And I feel this legislation is only doing so as a partisan issue. And that's it.
All right, Rob.
So yeah, there's a lot of problems with how I see this being portrayed in the media. They wanted to claim that this was racist, and they really had no reason. So just to give you an idea of the misinformation about this law, the first reason they said it was racist was because on Sundays, black people like to go to church more often than white people, and then after going to church, they like to vote. And allegedly, this bill was going to shorten hours on Sundays to vote. Therefore, it was racist. Only problem, it actually lengthens hours on Sundays. So it's the exact opposite of what we were told. And yet, so then they just went to the next thing. They said, well, you can't give bottles of water. Well, no, the problem is this. You can't give bottles of water within 150 feet if you're not a poll worker. People will still be able to get bottles of water. You could still hand them bottles of water if you're 150 feet outside. You're still allowed to bring your own bottle of water if you want. No one's going to show me one example of someone passing out or dying of dehydration, particularly when the polls could still have water and people could still have. This is just grasping at straws. What this really
Wait,
is.
are we going to wait for another person to die, Rob? Is that what you
Again,
want? You want a body? You need
why
a
does everyone-
body?
why-
It's opening statements. We got to get.
Why can
through
everyone
opening
follow the
statements.
rules except you? It's,
I know.
It's
no, Rob,
it's
no.
all right, Rob. Go ahead.
Anyways, proceeding. So it's just something that they're blowing out of proportion because the truth is they want to make fraud as easy as possible. So, for example, with the ballot box, we have information from the Tennessee Star, for example, that 404,000 ballots that were cast, absentee ballots or mail-in ballots in the 2020 election, have lost their chain of custody. Right? We have evidence from polling that shows as high as 65%, I believe, of African Americans and 71% of people in this country think that voter ID is a good idea. There is this constant bigotry of low expectations where there's this idea of, oh, black people just can't figure out how to get identification. It's nonsense. And they're utilizing race and using this bigotry of low expectations in order to make a system where we know we have upwards of anywhere between 12 to 32 million illegal immigrants and other people that might want to engage in fraud. They're trying to make a system where that's as easy as possible to do. For example, we see in Pennsylvania that your voter signature registration doesn't even have to match your ballot if you're using mail-in ballots now. This is despite the fact that Democrats then promptly challenged signatures in California of Gavin Newsom, and they challenged signatures previously in Pennsylvania with Ralph Nader. So yeah, it's just a sham. They're trying to say it's racist. This isn't racist, and laws in other states are actually more strict, like New York and other states, than this Georgia law. So this is all about corporations and political power trying to make it as easy as possible to have fraud and using their agency and their influence to be able to ensure that.
All right, Aiko and then Nacho.
Okay, so the reason why, changing the laws that put more barriers in front of people, it's not just like because of inequality. There are in like the poor neighborhoods, a lot of times they're minorities, but it also is barriers to white people as well who are poor. Like it costs money to get an ID. You have to take a day off work and go there. These are things that like when you aren't like super stretched, doesn't seem like such a big deal, but there's like transportation, so it's I think just putting more things in the way of people voting, like there would have to be something to compensate for that, I guess. Like I feel like in general I'm just not a fan of like giving people fines and I don't know if that makes sense. That's all I got for now.
All right. She didn't even mention whiteness, everybody. Well done.
I'm not getting into that.
Next, American Nacho.
All right. Sorry, I had myself muted again. Oops. Okay, so the whole water bottle thing, if I'm still trying to find where I saved it earlier, but I guess my document didn't upload from my phone. But it basically said there's nothing of value to be exchanged in the voter lines while you're in line waiting to vote, and that's just basic. Like, nobody should be like coming up and soliciting you or anything like that when you're in the line to vote. I think that I can agree that it's a problem that we even have lines so long that people would need to drink a couple of bottles of water. Maybe that's something we can look into. But I don't think there's anything racist about not allowing people to come interrupt people who are standing in line to give them a bottle of water. That's just weird to me. And then in sort of a response to what No Comment said, why isn't there a wave of red or purple states jumping to make these kind of changes if it's only because of the loss? And then I just wanted to kind of piggyback off of what Rob said, which is that a lot of what's in this bill actually makes it easier to vote, and it's actually removing some obstacles. For example, in 86, line 86 on page 4, it says more than 100 counties have never offered voting on Sunday, and many counties offered only a single day of weekend voting. Requiring 2 Saturday voting days and 2 optional Sunday voting days will dramatically increase the total voting hours of voters across the state of Georgia, and all electors in Georgia will have access to multiple opportunities to vote in person or on the weekend for the first time. And then it goes on to say some counties in 2020 received significant infusions and grant funding for election operations, while other counties received no such funds. Promoting uniformity in the distribution of funds to election operatives will boost voter confidence and ensure that there is no political advantages conferred by preferring certain counties over others in the distribution of funds. So that, and then there was another, I can't find the exact place in here, but it's supposed to make voter ID, gaining a voter ID, like getting voter ID or getting voter registration, extremely easy, and I think free.
Free, yep.
Completely free? Yeah, so I just couldn't find the exact place.
Well, the voter ID card is already free.
Well, you are you
Are we sure about
are
that?
you done
Yeah,
with
that's
your opening statements?
Yeah,
All right.
yeah, that's it.
All
Hey,
right.
Rob, I wanted to really quickly, because you mentioned chain of custody. What were you talking about there? Were you talking about
There are
the
400
election results of the, like, what were we talking about?
So, for example, according to the Tennessee Star,
Okay.
there were 404,000 absentee ballots deposited in drop boxes that have lost a chain of custody.
Okay,
So that's why-
in Tennessee or in Georgia? I'm sorry.
That's in Georgia, and that's
In
why
Georgia.
that they want to make sure that these drop boxes can constantly be surveyed
So-
to make sure there's no tampering, stealing
How
of ballots.
sure are you that the election results in Georgia were like, like, I mean, are you thinking that might be questionable, or are you just thinking that, like?
I think that the election, I agree with what Time Magazine said, that there was a bunch of people, a shadowy cabal that worked to influence the election before the election. I don't have any proof whatsoever that the election was
Shadowy
stolen
cabal?
afterwards. Right?
No, tell me
that's what
about
Time
this.
Magazine's.
You might
Sure,
make,
we
you
can
might make
talk
me a
all night about it.
conservative here. Yeah, no, I want to hear about this,
Right.
Rob. Okay, shadowy cabal. Let's go.
Right. So Time Magazine talked about how a shadowy cabal raised hundreds of $1 millions to change voting laws to ensure that Joe Biden won. They also did things like had people on the street that were willing to take to the streets if Biden didn't win. They censored information such as the New York Post story about Joe and Hunter Biden. They worked hand in hand with media and social media groups to promote stories that were favorable for Democrats and to deny stories that were
So,
favorable
are
for
we saying
Republicans.
shadowy cabal because we don't know who they are exactly? I'm just trying
No,
to
they-
understand.
In
The article admitted who they were. They
Okay, who
talked
are
who they
they?
were.
No, tell me. I want to know
Okay,
this.
all right,
If
hold on.
people are,
Sure,
like,
I'll bring
I'm
up.
just gonna share
I
the
can bring up
link.
the actual names of the people that you want. Like,
Yeah, bring up
it's-
the names. Definitely, I would love to hear that.
Yeah, sure.
Let's hear some names, Rob.
Sure.
So, Rob, did the article call them a shadowy cabal?
Yes,
or
that's the
are you
headline of
The
referring to
article
them?
used word for word. I'll post a link in the chat right now.
Well, yeah, if they said they were a shadowy cabal, I mean, that's in black and white,
This
so it
was
must be.
this
yeah,
was how they
were-
described their own operation. This
Their
wasn't
own
the right
operation?
calling. Yes,
Oh,
Yeah,
this was.
what are they called again? What is
okay.
the name?
I just posted
Project?
the link in chat.
I actually I've read the article.
In the
That's not what a
I gotcha.
shadow campaign is. Not a shadowy cabal.
Yeah,
Okay,
look,
my mistake.
I just wanna
I-
say
okay, let's
that
go.
actually, like the whole like shadowy cabal thing, that stems from anti-Semitism. Not calling anyone
What?
anti-Semitic.
real quick, if I could say real
Thank
quick,
you.
this is what the article says. It says, that's why the participants want the secret history of the 2020 election told, even though it sounds like a paranoid fever dream. A well-funded cabal of powerful people ranging across industries, ideologies, working together behind the scenes to influence perceptions, change rules and laws, steer media coverage, and control the flow of information. They were not rigging the election, they were fortifying it. And they believe the public needs to understand the system's fragility in order to ensure democracy in America. So they use the word cabal, so I take the beef up with Time Magazine. That
So,
they're
in other
anti-Semites,
words,
I
Rob,
guess.
I'm trying to
okay.
understand.
Is
This is the group. This is the group that was basically they were claiming that they weren't like trying to hide it. This was like the group that like did it was behind like it's not something that they're trying to like hide, because usually a cabal is something that like tries to squirrel it. Are you saying that they used to be a cabal? They were like all hiding, and now they're like, hey,
No, but-
it was us. We did
Yes,
it.
that's
Hey,
that's
everybody,
exactly what
it's
the
us.
article
How's it going?
says.
We
That's
can use
exactly
that to
That's a
describe.
weird fucking jam right there.
Wait, but we can use that as a descriptor.
Rob, have you got those names yet? I would love to hear the names of the
can
shadowy
create-
cabal members.
If you came
Okay.
back and said, like, hey, I'm part of a cabal, then I would say that you were part of a cabal, like as a descriptor. Like, why is that wrong for me to say that after they said it themselves?
I just
How
want
is
to
that
say
wrong?
Okay, if I
norm,
can get it at
like
some
a
point.
normalized thing, but the language itself, like it's a norm. I don't expect people to know this, but the language has been historically like referencing Jews. So I just want
Okay,
to
Can you?
well,
out.
listen.
I'm just
Not
never
because
heard
I'm
it
a
before.
Jew.
I mean,
Maybe
I
you
don't.
want to
I just,
anything.
I
You're
just,
probably right, but I'm just curious as to like how, like, or when. I don't know. That's the first time I've
Like
ever heard.
normally
I
when
think
somebody
it's-
is worried about a cabal, it has something to do with something anti-Semitic. So you look at like alt-righters believe in a cabal, flat earthers believe in a cabal. What's the guys who stormed the Capitol? The
QAnoners.
QAnoners believe in a cabal. Like yes,
Yeah.
and it all
Okay.
has some sort
Well,
of like
look,
anti-Jew
Rob-
rhetoric.
Rob,
me-
have you
let
got
me-
that
can
list
I get
yet?
in?
Have you got,
Wait,
go ahead. Sorry.
I just want to get in, please. Okay. So, that Time article was terrible. It was stupid. If you actually read the content of the article, though, I know that, look, I'm going to be honest with you. Time gave conservatives a fucking easy dunk because you can pick out little bits of it and go, oh, look, they use cabal here. But if you actually read the content of the article, what they're actually explaining is fairly unremarkable standard processes and procedures for electoral campaigning. And if you actually look, I'm certain that the right will have done exactly the same sort of things that the Time article is referencing. That Republican Party will have done exactly the same thing. So if you want to use that as proof there was a cabal, well, guess what? There's a right-wing cabal as well, because it's all the same fucking shit. Okay.
Rob, have you
Careful,
ever
that's
heard of something
anti-Semitic.
called a-
Careful
called
with
a
that word. It's
fixer?
anti-Semitic.
Listen, don't
Well,
listen.
look, we don't want to jump to conclusions.
Wait, sorry. Listen, Rob. You don't need to try and pull that shit with me. Okay. I don't give a fuck about that
I
shit.
didn't start it.
Well,
I
yeah,
didn't start it.
yeah, but the thing is, obviously, me using it in its context isn't anti-Semitic. I'm just describing it, aren't I?
Neither was mine. That's what's clear.
She wasn't calling you
but
anti-Semitic.
she wasn't calling you
She
anti-Semitic.
clarified that.
I said I didn't call him
was
anti-Semitic.
the
I said
language.
careful that could be construed for careful that could be anti-Semitic.
It's
So
funny.
some of the names that, so
this
I
virtue
just
signaling.
like we're getting off topic with
What's this
but I don't
virtue
have a
signal?
problem
You
talking
bought the
about
time
this.
up. Hang on a second.
really
You bought the
interesting.
time
Fine,
up.
I don't mind. We
You-
talk
you
about it the
brought
rest of the
up.
time. It's
Yeah,
good
yeah,
for
yeah, you brought it up.
conservatives.
You
Like
brought it
it's
up.
again,
What do you mean?
like we could talk about it the rest of the time. That's good for conservatives.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that. That's fine.
Can
So
I-
let's just talk about this article. No problem.
Wait,
So
wait,
first,
no,
What
hold
was
on.
there to talk about?
I can't read this. I'm too.
Hold
slow.
on, Daniela, go ahead.
Two things about the voter law that two people brought up. So voter ID is free in Georgia. You can get an ID card for free to use to vote. So there is no cost. Also, with regard to long lines and the water, two people mentioned long lines. Part of this bill was if you are a large polling location, so a location that is assigned to more than 2,000 voters, and wait times at your location are longer than 1 hour, you need to hire more staff. And then post-election, that precinct for voting will be split into more precincts so that wait times are not so long. That was part of this bill.
Okay.
Did Rob disappear?
That's
Like, I
fine.
think we're gonna get a list. Where look. Vivian has a list. I want to see Rob's list. I want to see who's on Rob's list. And like, he's got a
We
list
don't
of
have
names.
lists
Is he
over
going to
here,
get
okay?
it? He said he was going to get a list. I
Did he
was
say
promised
he
a
actually had a
list.
list? Okay, well, in the
Yes.
meantime, I'd like to tack on to that another big contention with this bill was that they're removing the drop boxes. They're removing drop boxes all across the state. They've removed hundreds of drop boxes. Okay, this is from the bill. Opportunities for delivering absentee ballots to a drop box were first created by the state election board as a pandemic response. These drop boxes created by rule no longer existed in Georgia law when the emergency rules that created them expired. So that's why we saw that too. So that, another thing that was being thrown around, like, oh, they're making it harder to vote, is also false, because we're assuming that we're not going to still be in pandemic stages, lockdown. Georgia's completely open now. So there's no need to have them, especially in 4 years. Even if we were to lock back down, I think we would be safe in another 4 years when it's time to vote again.
And
Or in
it's
another
that's-
2 years.
that's
for
the
the
point.
midterms.
That's the point I was
more
making real quick when talking
participation.
about
Would you
these drop
support it,
boxes. When I was talking
Wait, what
about
did you
these
say?
drop-
If you saw evidence that more drop boxes promoted more participation, would you say that's not a good expenditure for public resources to promote participation in our electoral system?
I think making it easier to vote does the same thing. Making it free to get a registration card, a voter registration card, or a voter ID, and then giving you more days to vote on.
Yeah. No, so I checked with my chat on that, and they kind of fact-checked you guys. So, like, you're being a little weaselly there. You're technically not wrong about the Sunday thing, but here's the deal. The Republicans originally wanted to reduce the hours on Sunday. That got changed because of political pressure, okay? They were going to do that originally. They changed their mind when they got caught with their hand in the cookie jar, just like the January 6th thing. When everybody get their hand caught in the cookie jar, like, oh, shit, I'm not with these ones.
Okay, if I may.
Q Shaman, oh, no, I don't know these people. Rob.
Okay, if I may speak.
You may.
I just don't like interrupting, like, comments, so I'd like to raise my hand so I have an
It's because you're not an anarchist, Rob. That's okay. We forgive you for that.
Reject those radicals on the left, right? Anyways, the point is, like, yeah, there were a bunch of things that were discussed going into this bill before it happened. This happens all the time with left-wing policies as well. That doesn't mean that we judge people and say, oh, this policy as it was crafted is a return to Jim Crow, as Joe Biden said. It actually opens up hours. It opens up drop boxes. It opens up hours specifically for the hours they said would be most beneficial for African Americans. As far as the idea of drop boxes, no, you don't want drop boxes everywhere. Again, the reason I brought up the fact that some 400,000 odd ballots they lost the chain of custody for 2020. That doesn't prove the election was stolen. But do people on the left, are you comfortable with that? Knowing that the chain of that we have a system that says you have to have a chain of custody of all these ballots, and it's just fine that 400,000 in 2021, even if you're I'm not saying that that's proof of the election in
2020 went pretty much like the other elections. The only difference was there was a pandemic, so some shit was different. But, like, I think that you're making an assertion that something different went on, and he never fucking proved it. Just like the affidavits, Rob. Just like all the other COVID. Look, this guy's still on the code. This guy's still on the fucking code. Okay, can I finish? Can I finish? That would be awesome. Also, I could finish first. All right. So, but Rob, why are you still on the copium? Like, this isn't exactly. You're like, I don't think it necessarily would have changed the thing, but are you really comfortable? I mean, like, this sounds like copium. This sounds like you're like, well, we really could have won if everything was fair and they had the chain of custody good. Is the chain of custody secure in the 2016 election? Can you compare those results and say, oh man, 2020 that looks really bad. 2016 though, when Trump was elected, good shit. Or is it just that it's good shit that Trump got elected and you're still sad that you lost your god emperor because he went down like a fucking loser and took the L like you seem to be reticent to? So, Rob, again, your list. You were going to bring us a list of people on this in the shadowy cabal. I would love to know what their names are, Rob.
Right, first, I'm going to continue going on the point I want.
Rob, real quick, just 1 second.
Oh,
we're going to let some other people get in here as well. So as soon as once you finish, we're going to go to. I think Aiko was trying to get in just a second ago. So go ahead.
Sure. Sure. So the problem is, yes, the 2020 election was massively different than the 26 election because in Georgia, I know American Nacho already said this, but no comment chick who asked me a question then leaves. She probably wasn't listening to him because she was geared up to make some inane point where she interrupted again. But American Nacho already correctly illustrated that the drop boxes were unique to the 2020 election because of COVID. That's how we know that there was that it was a different situation than 2016. Again, I don't understand where this comes from the left. I'm not saying the fact that the chain of custody was lost proves that the election was stolen or anything like that. I'm saying that anyone who reasonably wants fair elections should say, yeah, that's a problem. If every state requires a chain of custody, it's a problem if 400,000 something ballots lost that chain of custody. So if we're crafting a bill to ensure that you can continue to vote by mail, we ought to make sure that those drop boxes would be in places that we could clearly identify the chain of custody. That's all.
Why weren't the courts
I'm not going to answer you if you're just going to keep interrupting, right?
I just really want to probe
you asked me for another question. Mike Podetzer was Mike Podetzer was.
We're going to go to Aiko.
Right. So Mike Podetzer was the person who founded this organization. Then they called their organization involved people like Greenpeace. Right. It involved all of these organizations. They called their like Community to Action, MoveOn.org, Planned Parenthood, Greenpeace, Progressive Data Geek, Strategists, Representatives, Donors Foundation, state level grassroots organizers, racial justice activists. No, I said donors, representatives and donors of foundation, state-level grassroots activists, racial justice activists, and others. There was a weekly 2.5-hour Zoom call. It was structured around a series of rapid-fire 5-minute questions on everything. The invitation-only gathering soon attracted hundreds, created a rare shade base of knowledge and fractious progressive government. So I don't know. You think you got some got you. Again, this isn't some Alex Jones or right-wing rag. This was Time Magazine that listed the groups. Right, and a bunch of groups that were in there. A bunch of groups that were in there.
Yes. Okay, not people.
Is this some victory for you?
I just want to know. You said a list of names. I thought you meant people. Did you not mean people? You just meant a list of names of groups.
Names, groups that were involved with this. Yes.
Okay, but you don't have more people. Okay, I thought you were talking about.
I can keep reading the article. I'm sure there's more people named. if you
Okay,
want.
yeah, I would love to hear the.
Is this what the panel's going to be?
No,
is
we're
this
not
what-
gonna.
But hold on.
He's
We
promising
could move on to this.
names.
Hold on.
If we move on to this, that means
that.
that they concede that this bill was not racist.
Okay, hold on.
I don't think
Wait,
so. I think that's a
hold on,
weird
hold
chant.
on,
That's a weird
guys,
chant
hold on.
moment.
Who said
Hold
that?
on.
Wait,
Hold
who
on.
said? Who
Guys,
said-
hold on. We're gonna go.
Oh my goodness.
We are gonna go to Ico. Rob, if you want to find the names and read and list them off later, or put them in the private chat, that would be fine as well.
Sure.
Okay,
Sure.
Ico, go ahead.
Get out of my water. Cat. Yep. Okay. Okay, so basically, I can't really engage with this conversation so much because if I want to like assume everyone's here in good faith and you're giving me sources, but I also don't have time to read them, so I really can't talk to you about these things in good faith at the moment. But yeah, I'd be interested to hear more about, like, I guess the narrative that you personally have, because we all have narratives, and who knows who to even believe ever. Basically, it just seems like everyone is kind of in it, like we all are kind of like have some brain worms, and I'm willing to give it a shot that maybe I also had them too, and maybe we can just all try to get rid of our brain worms together.
All right, we're gonna go to Chud Logic and then Danielle.
Okay, no problem. Right, so I actually think that there is like some nuance here, right? And I don't think that it's really helpful. And I'll be honest, it seems like the right are more, trying to cram words in our mouth to go, oh, you're saying it's racist, you're saying it's racist. I haven't fucking said it's racist. You play the fucking tapes, point to where I said it's fucking racist. I ain't said it's racist once, okay? However, the point to make on this, and the reason, this idea that, saying that black people are less likely to have ID is racist. I'm sorry, that's just like, I don't know what it is. It's like some sort of inverse virtue signaling type nonsense from the right. Study after study has shown that if you implement strict voter ID legislation, whether you like it or not, it will disenfranchise the black community. That is just a fact. It's a factual thing that's been studied. If you want to disagree with it, that's fine, but you're literally arguing against factual data that exists. So I don't know what to tell you. You're arguing against reality.
Okay, so there's
I would
several
love it
problems.
if you
One,
would
it wasn't
We're
just
gonna go to we're gonna go to Danielle. Go ahead.
I'd love to see the study that says that, but assuming that's true, this bill is passed in what March. So I think there's plenty of time for groups, including Black Lives Matter and any other charity group that wants to get involved, to organize getting minorities who, for whatever reason, don't have easy access to voter ID, and getting them a voter ID, especially since it's at no cost. So if the logistics are the problem, if getting there is the problem, there are solutions for that, and we should figure those out.
Sure, but
I think
sorry, go on.
I think it's a little nutty to just be like, we are not going to verify this person exists because it could disenfranchise them, rather than saying, we need to verify this person exists. We don't want to disenfranchise them. Here's how we solve for it. Like,
Okay.
It doesn't have to be binary.
But the thing is, you're trying to solve a problem that doesn't even exist. Again, voter impersonation fraud is just so rare, it's not even worth a consideration. If we're in a position where there was like thousands upon thousands of votes that were illegitimately being cast through voter impersonation fraud, I would agree that we would need to implement something. But if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's an old maxim that I think sometimes has some use, and I think is applicable in this case. This problem you're trying to solve just doesn't exist.
Okay, so one of the issues with so a couple things to say on this, Chud. It wasn't, at least for me. I don't think I said that you said it was racist. The problem is this is how it's being talked about by people in positions of power in this country. Our president said this is worse than Jim Crow. Major League Baseball is moving the All-Star game because this is allegedly racist. This is the attack that was made, right? So kudos to you for not saying it was racist, but I believe that we are legitimately responding to people in positions of power in the mainstream that this is the claim that they're making, and it's clearly a nonsense claim. Secondly, Daniela makes the absolute correct argument. There have been like actual, blue checkmark people or celebrities that have came out and said, you show me one person in Georgia that doesn't have ID that wants to vote, I will put thousands up to make sure every single person has an ID. The IDs are free. You can get them for free. If there's so much of a movement to enfranchise voters, then why wouldn't these organizations be finding these people that apparently by scores want to vote but don't have ID and be helping them with them? It's because they're manufacturing a problem that doesn't exist. And the last thing I'll say is, you say that voter fraud's not that big of a deal. How would we know?
Studies.
Was there an audit?
Studies.
Was there an audit of the? Was there an audit of the 2020 election? Studies, right? Right. We changed the voting laws. Right. We real quick. We changed the voting laws massively, almost all over the country for 2020. That would open them to all sorts of fraud. For example, in Pennsylvania, the studies that you're talking about didn't take into account that your voter registration signature does not have to match your mail-in ballot signature. So how would we know if that's rife with fraud unless we did an audit? Okay. I'm sure you agree that an audit would be a good idea. Would you agree an audit of the election would be a good idea?
Yeah, okay, so if we want to have an audit of the election, fine.
With the 2000 election.
Wait. Let me finish. Fine. More investigation, more data is good. I don't disagree that if there was a government-led investigation into whatever you want to have, a bipartisan investigation, whatever. But the point that I want to make though is that whilst I agree that there's nothing wrong inherently with having a look further into it, I think it's quite telling that how many court cases did Trump lose trying to prove that there was evidence of widespread voter fraud? I think it was 2 minor wins that he got out of what was it, 50 or 60 cases? I can't remember. Off the top
Show
of my
me
head.
that Trump. Other people brought cases that wasn't Trump. He didn't lose 50 or 60. That's not true. And again, the idea right, and that doesn't prove it. What's that?
Just to tack on before it gets too far away from it, from what Rob was saying, like the whole moving of the MLB out of Atlanta, a largely black city, to Denver, that has like a 1% black population or something insanely low. I mean, you're doing more damage to the black community than you are helping it. So just add that cherry on top there too.
Oh,
Okay.
and the other... also Colorado has voter ID requirement. Just FYI.
I don't give a fuck about
quick,
MLB. Why am I being held accountable for the actions of the MLB? I don't give a fuck about the MLB.
This is something that happened as a result of the mainstream narrative that this is a racist bill.
Go and speak to MLB then. Why are you speaking to me about that? I don't fucking care.
Okay,
because this is what happens when you promulgate this shit narrative that this bill is racist.
Hey, everybody, hold on. We're a little over time right now, so we're gonna let everybody do this in a closing statement. Go ahead and shout yourselves out at the same time. Let everybody know where they can find you, and nobody, please, again, no questions. Don't interrupt. There are no. You can't ask them anything or interrupt. So we'll go ahead and go backwards from how we started. So we'll start with no comment, Chick. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm just curious, Rob, no, I'm not going to ask you any questions. Okay, so I am No Comment Chick. I am on Twitch and YouTube. You can check out my videos. I am supporting a left which stands up and doesn't stand down and doesn't let assholes like Rob fucking gish gallop all over the place and send out little brainworms which infiltrate people's minds and, expose them to ideas that they wouldn't have otherwise had because they're literally no way to take care of 12 ideas in the space of a debate, Rob. You're just throwing out listen this, and then you say that I'm bad faith for interrupting you. These are the same things that you're doing. These are the same things that anybody's doing, but somehow when a blue-haired femoid does it, it's a completely different. So
I feel like
good memes.
Hold on. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
What?
No comment, Chick. Go ahead.
No, that was it.
Okay. Daniela.
Well, I thought this was really interesting. Not surprising, but interesting. anyway, you can find me, some of my content at When Truth Becomes Revolution on Facebook, and that's all I got.
Nice to meet you.
Chud Logic.
Sorry, is it closing statements for this topic or just broadly?
You can do it broadly as well. Yeah, whatever you want with your closing statement.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, like I say, I think that one thing we see as conservatives will constantly try and pin actions of like the liberal media establishment on lefties. I don't give a fuck about all these fucking this bullshit, this cultural nonsense you're talking about. It's fucking nothing to do with me. So don't pin that on my fucking door, okay? Further to that, what I'd say is like. There is some nuance here. I appreciate maybe got a bit spicy, but I agree there is some nuance to this legislation, sure. But I think at its core, you do have to contend with the fact that it is, trying to fix issues that don't exist, which doesn't really make sense to me. In terms of my final point, listen, I know maybe got a bit spicy at times. Appreciate all of you. Had a great chat with all of you. Thanks so much for having me on. Chad Logic on all good social media platforms. On Twitter, follow me at Irrational Chad. That's it.
Awesome.
Your friend. That's not you. That you meant your
That's
friend.
my producer. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Rob, go ahead.
Okay, just to close the topic, again, they're calling this Jim Crow on steroids. And I appreciate people apparently are saying that's not how they feel about this law here, but you can see it's a very benign law that actually puts, again, in New York's worse, Delaware's worse with their restrictive law. You can't even wear a shirt that says like Trump or Biden in New York. I didn't even know that, let alone hand out food, So like it's just virtue signaling. And I understand where Chud Logic's coming from saying, I don't care about the MLB, but this stuff matters. We just had over 100 corporations and people from them meet to discuss what to do about boycotting states that have these sorts of election laws. That's insane. That's not democracy. That's people in this wealthy class that are deciding these things. And the last thing I'll say is like, we should have an audit. Please shut up. You've been nothing but a detriment to this whole panel. So if you could please stop your detriment here.
Detriment anywhere you fucking go, you ridiculous ass clown. Nobody wants to
leave
use
these
the
last couple seconds. Leave these last couple seconds go without your interrupting.
I fucking love it, and they love to see it.
Okay, sorry. Go.
Sure.
Go ahead.
No
Rob.
problem. So what was my thought on this? So when you see,
let's do it.
Please.
I'll wait until. Can I?
Okay,
thanks.
You can rap God. Yes.
I'll wait. Can you could mute her, or I could just keep waiting to finish my thoughts if you like. It's up to you. Anyways, these corporations putting their thumb on the scale, that's terrible. And the last thing I'll say about this is just because we don't have studies right now, if you leave a loophole like this and you don't require ID, inevitably someone will be corrupt, and it might be someone on the right. So all of us, regardless of our political leanings, should want safe and secure elections. Polling shows that over 50% of Republicans and Democrats think that there were massive problems with the 2020 elections, and they don't trust the results. So you could find me at Rob Noor on Twitch, like my name's spelled. So it's just all lowercase, one word. You can find me at Normal America with Rob Noor on YouTube, and I'm also on D Live at Normal America. So thanks so much, everyone that was on the panel that had a constructive dialogue with you. It's nice to see that there are people on the left that you could have that with. So I really appreciate you. And thanks for having me, Tom Fuller. You had a lot of fun.
Appreciate you coming, Aiko.
I'm Aiko Rules. I mainly stream on Twitch. I think that I was kind of frustrated during this panel because I feel like we are talking to and defending people who aren't here. And it's like, are we just making a case to excuse the parts of our side, quote unquote, why they suck? I feel like we're not actually talking about why you think this thing is good or not, like you as a person. I don't know, I feel, or at least when we're talking to each other, and I just want to actually have a conversation, like a one-on-one conversation, so that way I can know the events, and I can the details. I'm sorry, I got very stoned. Nice to meet the people I didn't know. And always good to see Chud and Irene, and I don't know, I'm gonna be on Twitch after this.
All right. Thanks, Psycho. And then Nacho.
It's time for me now. Sorry. I was making jokes with my wife. Okay, totally unrelated. We're drinking a lot. Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I love everybody on the panel. Chud Logic and Ica, thank you guys for being reasonable. Really disappointed with No Comment Chick. I'm sorry if my
wear that as a
emotions
badge
from
of
dealing
honor.
with
Thank
that bleed over into our discussions. But Ico and Chud, I'll be glad to sit down with you one-on-one any day, anytime you want to talk. Please let me know.
I went easy on you this
in
time,
closing,
American
I
Nacho.
guess Floyd could have OD'd. Political violence is wrong. GA Senate Bill 202 is not racist. Okay. I'm American Nacho. You can find me everywhere at American Nacho. You can find me on Twitch, YouTube, Instagram, all that stuff. So, love you guys. Thanks for having me on, Tom.
Awesome, man. I appreciate everybody coming on. I know that most of you, or everybody except for Danielle, I suppose, you guys all stream on Twitch. Those are your main platforms. I really appreciate you guys taking the time off that to come on the show tonight. It really does mean a lot to me. And outside of that, I'm sure I will see you guys again around. And you guys have a good night. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. Have a good one, everyone. All the best.
Thanks, everyone.
See you, Chud.
Bye.